Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. It is 9:02 a.m., and I would like to call the January 23rd quarterly board meeting to order, please. Please be aware that this meeting is being broadcast via the internet, and those present in the boardroom may be visible to the public. Members, when I call your name, please announce present. I, Fred Fadios, am present. Stacy Hawk, Vice Chair.
Present.
Richard Clemmer.
Present.
Juan Nevarez.
Present.
Ashley Thomas via Zoom.
Present.
Welcome Wilson. Emma Walschlager.
Present.
Daniel Wong.
Present.
Luke Schwartz.
Present.
Please record in the minutes that we have a quorum. Please excuse the absence of Javed Anwar due to duties requiring his attention elsewhere. Do I have a motion to approve this absence? A motion by Daniel Wong. Second. Second by Juan Nevarez. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. The next agenda item is the introduction of the new Commissioner of Higher Education. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Wynn Rosser. Dr. Rosser was appointed as the 7th Commissioner of Higher Education and Chief Executive Officer of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, effective January 1st, 2025. Dr. Rosser brings a wealth of experience of leadership and education. He previously served as President and CEO of the T.L.L. Temple Foundation, Chief Executive of the Greater Texas Foundation, and held faculty, staff, and senior administrative roles within Texas higher education institutions. A dedicated advocate for education in Texas, Dr. Rosser is past chair of the Grant Makers of Education Board of Directors, an alumnus of the Texas Lyceum, the past chair of the Philanthropic Advocates. He currently serves as president and board chair of Texas Rural Funders and co-chairs the National Center for Family Philanthropy Rural Funders Network. Dr. Rosser has also previously shared his expertise as a lecturer in the Bush School of Government and Public Service at Texas A&M University. Dr. Rosser's academic journey began with an associate's degree from Kilgore College, followed by bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees from Texas A&M University. Additionally, Dr. Rosser completed emergency medical technician training at the School of EMS. He is a nationally registered of the Texas State licensed EMT. Dr. Rosser, welcome. Would you like to say a few words, please?
Yes, sir. And thank you, Chairman Vadias. Good morning, board members and everyone who has joined us in person and online. I'm honored to step into this role as Commissioner of Higher Education, and I'm grateful for your trust in me as well as Governor Abbott's. As the chairman just articulated, my career spans over 3 decades in higher education and related policy issues being a through line across those career moves. Experiences as a university faculty and staff member and senior administrator, along with time in philanthropy supporting post-secondary preparation, access, and credential completion, inform my approach to this work. But more important than that, I bring a personal perspective to this role as the son of a family whose trajectory was transformed by higher education, and as a father of 3 children whose educational journeys are a constant priority for my wife and me. In fact, my wife and daughter are leaving on a college visit trip today. Before going further, Sarah Keaton, I want to take a moment to thank you for your service as interim commissioner over the past several months. Your commitment to our mission was and is instrumental in maintaining the agency's momentum. Sarah has also provided very wise counsel upon my transition into the agency. And so, Sarah, I'm appreciative and grateful, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work alongside you as we have over the last few weeks. Interim periods can be uncertain, but what is certain to me is that everyone in the agency remained focused on purpose. And I'm thankful for their dedication during the interim period. And again, everyone's provided a very warm welcome. I'm not drinking out of a fire hose at this point. I'm just getting hit from all directions with a lot of high-powered water. Looking ahead, I'm energized by opportunities the new year brings to collaborate and continue advancing the essential work of building a talent-strong Texas, especially during the 89th legislative session. The session presents significant opportunities to invest in student financial aid, strengthen the state's research and development efforts, and improve our data infrastructure while also advancing key priorities for Texas higher education. My primary goal is to serve as a resource partner and advocate to support our institutions. And by strengthening our institutions, we can continue to provide opportunities for students, drive innovation, and contribute to the state's economic competitiveness, ensuring Texas remains a leader nationally and globally. I'm committed to learn more about the strategic post-secondary work going on across our state and look forward to exploring ways we can collectively serve all Texans. In a state as vast as Texas in geography and population, our ambitions for higher education should reflect that scale and vision. I'd like to take a moment to recognize a couple of new members of our agency leadership team. Glenna Brune is Associate Commissioner for Public Affairs. Glenna joins the agency with many years of experience in and around the state capitol, most recently serving as the Executive Director and CEO of the Texas Ports Association. Hey, Glenna, you're in the room somewhere over to my left. Previously, Glenna was at the Texas Trucking Association, and before that was on the communication team for Governor Rick Perry. Andy McLaurin. Andy, where are you? Right here front. Andy is Assistant Commissioner for Funding and has more than 16 years experience with Texas legislative agencies, including 6 years as the Legislative Budget Board's Public Education Team Manager and 8 years working as an attorney for the Texas Department of Insurance, and before that, a little bit of time at the Legislative Council. Happy to welcome Glenna and Andy to the coordinating board, and although they started before I did, glad they're here, and I hope that you'll join me in welcoming them as well. Shifting gears to today's agenda. Agency staff continue to revise our rules to ensure they're consistent and understandable. You have a number of items on today's agenda related to rules, and I appreciate the many hours that go into that process, and I appreciate those who provide helpful comments. It's also exciting to see new programs on the agenda for approval. These items represent a great deal of work for the institutions requesting approval and for the agency staff. Importantly, each is intended to serve a specific need in our post-secondary landscape. Our major policy discussion today will focus on credentials of value, which is the heart of building a talent-strong Texas. How we define those credentials and the value of a college degree will be the focus of the conversation, all aimed at economic mobility. I'm looking forward to the discussion and to delving deeper into the transformative, lifelong opportunities higher education creates for graduates and families. Finally, I want to thank you, the board, for your commitment to higher education and to creating opportunity for all Texans. Mr. Chairman, I've been looking forward to today's meeting for several months, and I'm ready for a productive day. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and welcome again. Thank you for those remarks. And now we will move on to next agenda item, which is agenda item on public testimony. We have not received any public testimony today, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 4A, consideration and possible action to approve the minutes from the October 24th, 2024 quarterly board meeting. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes for the October quarterly board meeting, please?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Clemmer, second by Mr. Wilson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or discussion? Hearing none, motion passes. Agenda item 4B is a consideration and possible action to approve our minutes from the November 14th, 2024 special call board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the November special call board meeting? Motion by Ms. Hawk, second by Ms. Emma Washbaum. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the consent calendar. The consent calendar includes non-controversial items that we think can be approved without comment or discussion. This allows us to save time for other items that may need more of our attention. Highlighted items in gray are the consent items on the agenda. You all have had the time in advance to review these items. And of course, any board member can request the agenda item to be removed or from the consent calendar. And that'll give us more opportunity to discuss the items later, fully later in the meeting. We are now going to take up the consent calendar in two parts, non-rule items and the rule items. The items that we have placed on non-rule consent are 7E, consideration and possible action to acknowledge gifts and donations to the board. 7F, consideration and possible action to amend board approval to increase the contract amount with a vendor for the Texas Success Initiative Assessment, version 2.0 pre-assessment activity. 10B, consideration and possible action to adopt the recommendation relating to the July 2024 annual compliance reports for institutions on the Certificate of Authorization names beginning with P through Z. 10C, consideration and possible action to appoint members to the Advisory Council on Post-Secondary Education for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. 10D, consideration and possible action to appoint a replacement member for the Learning Technology Advisory Committee. 10E, consideration and possible action to approve the report supporting underprepared students in Texas, continued progress and recommendations. 11B, a report on grants and contracts. 11C, review of the fiscal year 2025 financial report to the board. At this time, I would like to add the following items to the non-rule consent calendar. I'd like to add 8C, a report on financial aid advisory committee activities. 11E, the auditor's update on internal audit reports and activities. And 11F 1 through 5, auditor's update on state and federal compliance monitoring reports and activities. Members, does anyone want to add any other items to the non-rule consent calendar at this time? Does anyone want to remove any items? Do I have a motion then to approve the non-rule consent calendar as amended?
So moved.
A move by Mr. Nevares. Any second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Clemmer. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. Members, the next item on the consent agenda is the board rules. Rules placed on consent are either technical, conforming, or implement non-controversial policies around where there is consensus. Members, the rules and consent calendar today are 8D1, which is consideration and possible action to adopt proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 1, Subchapter BB, concerning the Texas application for State Financial Aid Advisory Committee. 8D2, consideration and possible action to adopt proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 22, Subchapter A, Section 22.7, concerning dissemination of information and rules. 8D3, consideration and possible action to adopt the recommendation relating to the 4-year review of Board Rules, Chapter 22, Subchapter F, Sections 22.112 through 22.115, concerning matching scholarships to retain students in Texas. 8D4, consideration and possible action to adopt proposed amendments to Board Rules Chapter 22, Subchapter F, Sections 22.113 through 22.115, concerning the matching scholarships to retain students in Texas. 8D5, consideration and possible action to adopt proposed amendments to Board Rules Chapter 22, Subchapter G, Sections 22.128 through 22.131, 22.133, and 22.135, concerning the Texas College Work-Study Program. 8D6 is consideration and possible action to adopt recommendations relating to the 4-year review of Board Rules, Chapter 22, Subchapter I, Sections 22.163 through 22.174, concerning Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program. 8D8, consideration and possible action to adopt proposed amendments to Board Rules Chapter 22, Subchapter K, Sections 22.201 through 22.210, concerning the Texas Transfer Grant Program. 10H1 is consideration and possible action to approve the proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 1, Subchapter F, Sections 1.121 through 1.127, concerning the Advisory Committee on Research Programs. 10H2, consideration and possible action to approve the proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 1, Subchapter Q, Sections 1.199 through 1.205, concerning the Community and Technical College Leadership Council. 10H3 is consideration and possible action to propose repeal of the Board Rules Chapter 1, Subchapter N, Sections 1.178 through 1.184, concerning the Graduate Education Advisory Committee. 10H4, consideration and possible action to proposed rules, repeal of Board Rules Chapter 1, Subchapter R, Sections 1.206 through 1.212, concerning the Undergraduate Education Advisory Committee. 10H5 is consideration and possible action to approve the proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 1, Subchapter DD, Sections 1.9531 through 1.9536, concerning Title IX Advisory Committee. 10H6, consideration and possible action to repeal Board Rules Chapter 1, Subchapter EE, Sections 1.9541 through 1.9546, concerning Study and Report on Core Curriculum Advisory Committee. 10H9 is consideration and possible action to approve the proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 6, Subchapter C, Section 6.74 concerning Minority Health Research and Education Grant Program. 10H10 is consideration and possible action to approve the proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 9, Subchapter E, Sections 9.91 through 9.96 concerning certificate and associate degree programs. 10H11 is consideration and possible action to approve the proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 9, Subchapter F, Sections 9.111 through 9.118 concerning workforce continuing education courses. 10H12, consideration and possible action to approve the proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 9, Subchapter I, Sections 9.161 through 9.163 concerning distance education. 10H13, consideration and possible action to adopt proposed new board rules in Chapter 10, Subchapter C, Sections 10.70 through 10.78 concerning the statewide preceptorship grant program. 10H14 is consideration and possible action to approve the proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 14, Subchapters A through F concerning research funding programs. Do I have a motion for approval of the rule consent calendar?
Could you repeat that one more time?
Mr. Wilson. you
Oh,
kept
sorry.
this in
I
advance.
make a motion, sorry.
A motion by Mr. Wilson,
I'll second.
second by Dr. Wong. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, okay. Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Let me have a shout out to the staff for the many hours of work of all those subchapters and the reviews. It's amazing all the work that this staff does a great job. So thank you all so much for that. Agenda item 6 is a major policy discussion. Major policy discussions are topics of interest where staff, policy experts, and our stakeholders provide coordinating board members with information on higher education policy matters or initiatives that have the potential to impact Texas statewide. The major policy discussion will focus on credential of value. Sarah Keaton, Deputy Commissioner of Administration and Operations. And again, Sarah, thank you as well as the Commissioner. Thank you. The board thanks you. We thank you for all the work that you've done as the interim. Appreciate that. And Dr. David Troutman, our Deputy Commissioner for Academic Affairs, will present this item and be available for questions. Dr. Troutman.
Great. Thank you so much. Good morning. David Troutman, Deputy Commissioner for Academic Affairs, and I have with me Sarah. Yep. I didn't want to
Sarah
introduce her.
Keaton, Deputy Commissioner of Administration.
And so I'm really excited about this conversation. You know, over the past several board meetings, we have had given you updates on credentials of value. But I think what we're doing today is to have a deep dive, to have a discussion about what are the inner workings. Let's look under the hood of credentials of value. So you have clear examples of what that actually means. You know, I think Sarah and I on a weekly basis get questions about where's the list? Where's the list of credentials of value? And it's a lot more complicated than that. While our methodology provides a yes/no of whether or not students are reaping the benefits, it can vary. It can vary by the region of the state. It can vary by the demographics of the student. It can vary by the field of study that you're going into. And so with that said, I want to make sure we provide you a really comprehensive review of what we've done. And I also want to thank you all, the board, on supporting us as we go through this journey. I know that you've probably approved over 200 rules associated with credentials of value. And without that support, we would be sort of a hamster in a wheel. And so I appreciate you helping us keep the momentum going forward, and also appreciating Sarah as my partner in crime with really supporting this effort through the agency. I also want to thank Melissa Humphreys, Taylor Cox, and Shichin Liu, who are our data analysts, really leaning into this and really understanding how we connect higher education data with workforce data. And then lastly, I want to thank the Texas Workforce Commission. Without their partnership, we would just be able to produce you the number of degrees. By allowing us to connect these data with the data they collect from the industries, it really can help a comprehensive story. And so today, we're going to talk about our commitment that we've had on policy, practice, and data to tell the story of our students better off. And we'll take that deep dive. Next slide. So before we do that, I wanted to acknowledge some research from Galloway, a firm that worked with our Public Affairs Division, thanks to the funding from the Texas Higher Education Foundation Board, on really examining perceptions. And if you haven't been, I assume you've been shared this report, but I can definitely, after this presentation, share it with you all. It's really rich in information around understanding. We've interviewed over 800 parents and students to understand their perceptions of higher education. And it was really in three buckets. It was understanding value and benefits of post-secondary education, the anxieties and challenges, and then also uncovering factors influencing attitudes, motivation, and decision-making. And with this research, I think this is sort of seed research where it's starting the momentum to understand what's happening. I think Sarah and I are committed to continuing to understand the perceptions of students, because this will translate into My Texas Future and creating that space so that students understand as early as 8th grade what type of opportunities they have as they're pursuing their high school diploma into a post-secondary education. It's going to help us with Texas On Course, which is really creating modules for counselors across the state, both in high school and post-secondary, on relevant topics and concerns from the student's mindset. And it's going to help our agency as a compass to make sure that we're meeting the needs of Texans. Next slide. So as you can see, that we ask a simple question: how important is higher education in determining future career success? And what you can see here is that Texas students and parents, overwhelmingly, over 80%, indicated that they agree that higher education is critical for success. Critical for success. So there's no doubt in their mind. It's just figuring out how we create lines of avenues for them to gain access to these educational experiences, and doing this in an affordable and accessible way. Next slide. And then we ask them, when you think about higher education, what challenges come to mind? And what you can clearly see here is the number one most frequently responded item was financial costs. We've known that. Now with credentials of value methodology and what Sarah's going to present to you with our methodology, we can really examine the student investment piece. I think it's challenging because everyone has a unique experience and a unique background that can contribute to their financial aid packaging. So it's a very complex measure, but how can we create predictability when it comes to financial costs for all of our students? So that's number one. Number two is fear of debt. And so both of those top two are aligned with our strategic plan at Talent Strong Texas, because we have to ensure that if a student needs to take out debt, it's manageable. It's not going, we think about the student debt to income ratio of, is it less than 10%? So is less than 10% of your income going towards your student payment? And we just really want to make sure that we understand what's happening with that. And then number three was stress and pressures. I mean, I think that's just life and really navigating life. But I did want to, something that's not on the slide and that's in the report, we do ask the students about, what are your concerns from transitioning from high school to life? Do you know what the number one response was? Financial stress. So this runs a through line through everything. It's not just that higher education is a financial stress, life is a financial stress. And we know with cost of living expenses and while Texas is booming, it's also increasing the cost of living throughout all of our cities and rural areas as well. Next slide. So if you didn't have the opportunity to go to the Texas Higher Education Edge conference this year, we had a student panel, and it was really interesting. In our study, we ask individuals about their thoughts and concerns and thinking about higher education, and most commonly they said higher education is a stepping stone. It's giving me agency to pursue greater things. I define that as mobility, right? Social mobility. They define it as a good paying job. And so we asked a similar question to the panel during the conference. And we promised that we didn't prime them. Like this was their knee-jerk reaction. And it hits home when it says, what keeps me up at night? Am I going to be able to find a good job and a prosperous career? Anything more than a high school diploma will take you further in your career. And that's true. What we know is that by 2031, the majority of jobs in Texas will require an education beyond high school. And create and close the gaps of attainment, affordability, and accessibility when it comes to higher education. And so let's move on and talk about credentials of value. Next slide. So I wanted to, so in preparation for this presentation, I was reflecting on my career. So over the past 15 years, I've been able to have the opportunity to link higher education data with earnings data. I'm doing this for multiple reasons. One, for a personal reason. I've really seen how higher education has changed my life. I'm a first-generation student from a low-income family, and I really didn't see any other opportunity but to get an education. And I'm sitting here because of that. And I want to acknowledge that and pay that forward. I think that it's important for us to be transparent because sometimes when you look at the data, my question is, are we creating value or creating harm? And so we can examine those data to understand that. But with that said, when we zoom out, we have to acknowledge the challenges and obstacles that we face with trying to achieve prosperity and wealth. And those gaps have widened over time, and it becomes more challenging for students to see themselves as college students because a lot of students in high school are working while they're in high school to help support their livelihood and their family's livelihood. And so that transitions into higher education. And what we know with the data is that the majority of our students who are enrolled are working. Whether it be part-time or full-time, they have to at this point in time. And so we really have to ensure that all students can see themselves as college students, all students can succeed and navigate through our system and receive and reap the benefits of post-secondary education. Next slide. So I wanted to zoom out another time. So I asked our analysts, so we have this massive data set of all the students who have graduated with a certificate associate's, a bachelor's, and we've tied that to earnings data. I said, can you do me a simple task? Can you sum all the earnings for one cohort who's graduated? So one cohort that's graduated across our public institutions, both 2-year and 4-year, for undergraduate degrees for either certificate associates or bachelor's. First year earnings equates to $7.3 billion. And by the 5th year, it's increased by 49% to almost $11 billion. $11 billion. So that's taxable income. That's taxable, or that's income that it's going to feed our economy. It's going to feed the livelihood of students. I did an activity with ChatGPT, and I said, $11 billion. If you take a $1 bill and put it end to end, where would that take you? What's the mile? It would actually be 2 round trips to the moon and back. That's how much dollars we're talking about. It's really significant and exciting to see. And then what we can do, next slide, what we can do is we can drill down and I don't want to brag, but I think our agency has some of the most robust data in the country. I can tell you the earnings for 1, 2, 5, 10 years of students based on every degree that we have to offer. And so I just wanted to give you a glimpse of this to really show that it does have value. And as we've done this for the last 15 years to link these data with median earnings, it only tells part of the story. And so Sarah's going to talk about how we can place these numbers in context. So when we think about our credential value methodology, the nucleus of our methodology is based on earnings. full stop. It's based on earnings. And then we can go into and discuss student investment. How much are students and parents investing in education? And what are the foregone earnings that are taking place? So I want to turn it over to Sarah to take a deeper dive into the credential of value and practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we think about credentials of value, moving from the theoretical framework of why does this matter? Why do we focus on credential of value? And then think about how are we actually incorporating this concept into public policy and funding mechanisms that the state and the legislature are already using today. And I think one of the bigger examples of that right now is community college finance. So moving to the next slide, credentials of value in community college finance under House Bill 8 are integral and underpin the entirety of the new formula. So that's really in two key ways. From a baseline perspective, community colleges are funded on credentials only if they meet the credential of value threshold. So if a community college awards a credential and it is not of value to students, they will not receive funding from the state for that credential. So it's integral, and those earnings outcomes are integral to the entire system. We've also added in fiscal year 25, the board approved a new outcome for credential of value premium. Community colleges can earn this premium payment for credentials where students are achieving return on their investment even faster. So they're going beyond just achieving a return on investment, but they're hitting that return more quickly. So next slide. This slide shows the actual calculation within community college finance for how we calculate credentials of value using three main inputs and then cumulative earnings. And moving to the next slide, I'm going to walk through kind of using a student example on sort of how we would calculate or how we do calculate credentials of value for a given credential for a student. So using the example of Maria. Maria graduated with a degree, associate degree in biology from Above and Beyond Community College, ABCC. It took her 3 years. She started in 2010 and graduated in 2013. And she got her associate's degree over that time. So moving to the next slide. So looking at the first input for the credential of value calculation, which is student investment. So the way that we calculate Maria's student investment, how much she paid, we look at her cost of attendance, including tuition, fees, books, room and board, over the time period that she was enrolled, so for 3 years, how much financial aid she received. And so in this case, Maria's net cost of attendance was $24,000 over those 3 years. Next slide. The next factor that we look at is her opportunity cost, or how much in foregone wages Maria incurred over that time period. So next slide. We calculate that if Maria had not enrolled in ABCC to pursue her associate's degree, she would have earned $26,184 in wages each year. That's the average that high school graduates earn. So that's how much she would have earned. While she was enrolled, she actually earned $15,000 working part-time. So her opportunity cost in this case is just over $37,000. So we factor in her actual cost and her opportunity cost when we look at her total investment in pursuing this degree. Next slide. And then we look at the comparison wage, which in this case for community colleges, next slide, would be the average wage for high school graduates if they didn't pursue any higher education. And so we look at that over 10 years. So every year we assume that she would have earned $26,184 for a 10-year cumulative wage of $261,000. So that's our comparison that we're comparing to again over the 10 years. Moving to the next slide. Then we look at how much did she actually earn with her associate's degree from ABCC. Next slide. So in this case, first year after graduating with her associates, Maria earned $40,000. Her wages increased over time. So by year 10, she was making $75,000. So that's a 10-year cumulative earnings of $576 compared to what she would have earned if she only had a high school degree. So moving to the next slide, I know there's a lot going on this slide, but this is where we add it all together. We look at how much did she actually pay, how much did she forego in wages, how much did she earn relative to what she would have earned without the degree. And then we can look at over the 10 years, did she achieve a return on her investment, and how quickly did she achieve that return on her investment? So in this case, Maria broke even and achieved positive ROI at the end of year 3. So 3 years out, she had already not only increased her wages and earnings, but earned enough to recoup her total investment, including opportunity cost. So I think hopefully this kind of shows through a one student example of how we calculate how quickly students are achieving through their increased earnings that return on investment that they and their families are making in their higher education. I know that was kind of a lot of slides and math to go through. So happy to answer any questions both about that or anything.
Yeah, so
presentation.
I did want to acknowledge and once again brag on us in the sense that when you look at our methodology, we're considered a gold standard in the country when it comes to how we're calculating this. There are other states that might place in context just a number. So, for example, there's a state out there that says if a student they have to make at least $38,000 a year, but that only tells part of the story. It's not accounting for the investment that's being made or the foregone wages. And so we're a gold standard because we take into account and place that in context for the foregone wages, the opportunity costs that are associated, and also the true student investment that students are making. And we have this robust data system that we can slice and dice the data any which way, and we're starting to tell those stories and understand the differences that exist of what's happening to our students. So it's really exciting. So we're happy to answer any. We threw a lot at you this morning, and it's early, but Emma.
So the case study that you just walked us through, that's community college. What's reflected in House Bill 8, community college finance. What are we doing in the in the university setting? Like, so I understand this model. How are we applying that elsewhere outside of community college?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have all of this data for all the sectors of higher education, and we provide this data back to universities so that they can evaluate, what what value their credentials are bringing to students, and then we incorporate a lot of this data in terms of projected earnings and cost information in tools for students like My Texas Future. Community college is the only sector where the state funding is based on credentials of value right now. So we're providing a lot of this information to universities and students, but this is sort of the formula for the state where it's incorporated.
And as part of Talent Strong Texas, we do incorporate bachelor's degree recipients at the 4 years as part of our metrics of credential of value. So we have those analyses completed as well. But for the graduate program, there's a lot of things that we have to discuss and talking points about decisions being made with the data. So, for example, thinking about a master's student, we have to consider their previous educational experience and what investment was being made at another institution, and how do we place that in context with what their current institution was striving towards a master's program. I would probably lean on thinking about debt to income ratios as part of our manageable debt to think through, was the investment worth it based off those debt to income ratios. But right now we're not tackling the graduate program end because of the complexity of that.
And then with Texas State Technical Colleges or TSTCs, their formula is based on earnings, but it's just earnings relative to a base wage. It doesn't take into account the student investment or opportunity cost as part of that calculation. So their formula is earnings based, but doesn't include all of the elements of credentials of value the way community colleges does.
Okay,
And it's also,
yeah.
go ahead. I was going to say it's also based off of a federal minimum wage as well. So it's a very low bar.
Okay. And you said that this is available to the universities as they're making decisions, but as far as the student and the parent as they're making their decisions, we have My Texas Future, and I really should go in there and play with it myself to know, right? But how easy is it to get to that information? Is there like a ranking where you can see that the you know, the average degree will get you this and everything under this and everything over that. I mean, something easy for them to see and digest and understand.
That's a great question. So when you go into a career explorer, we'll ask you 6 simple questions about what you want to pursue. And then once you've finished your survey, it will let you know the degrees that are offered by institution and the median earnings that contributed to those types of careers or that field of study. And so I lean again. I try to shy away from rankings per se, because there's this balancing act between allowing a student to follow their passion, but also make sure it's a credential of value, not a credential of harm. And so just trying to tease that out so that because when you look at the data, it's not going to be a surprise to you that the majority of the high earners are in engineering, but not all students want to be engineers. But how do we create an avenue so that we can help give access to students who want to be a social worker and know that they're not going to be in debt for the rest of their life based off their educational experience because they wanted to follow their passion and help others in the community. So it's just that balancing act that we have to take.
Yeah, I guess the incentives and the disincentives that we create are important in understanding first what are our goals as a community, as a state, right? And so, I mean, I've heard some universities charge more for certain credentials that we would say are really high value, like engineering or health sciences, right? And there's no, I guess it's my understanding, there's not a big difference in financial aid based on degree. So so there's some degrees we want people to pursue, but you're going to get charged more and you're not going to get more help.
Yeah, I think those are exactly the levers, that when we look at this credential of value calculation, we can think about total student investment, like offering targeted financial aid or scholarships for some of those programs that have maybe a high social good, but lower ultimate earnings outcomes. And also time to degree, I think, is a big factor. I mean, one of the biggest things in this calculation is the longer it takes you to get through, the more you're investing and the more opportunity cost you're incurring in foregone wages. So if we can lower the cost and quicken the time to degree, I think that has a big impact, even if some of the earnings are harder, to change themselves.
It's also, I mean, through these analyses, it's really shining a light on additional metrics so that we can create some context around credentials of value. So for example, with time to degree, average time to degree for an associate's degree in Texas is 5.5 years for a 2-year program. 5.5 years. And so we have to think through so that it can be more fluid so individuals can both work while they're enrolled and get through and receive that credential at a much faster rate because the opportunities become too great. But then also when we look at other types of majors, we see some stackability that's taking place. And what I mean by that is, let's say we look at foregone wages. We actually can see that sometimes our students are making more while they're enrolled than students who went straight from high school to the workforce. And a lot of those are in the healthcare industry. So they might be an LVN, they might be some type of high demand area. And so they're actually doing better off so that investment's just going to accelerate at a much faster rate. So when we think about a break-even point, when we look at community college finance, 50% of the programs offering, hang on, let me take a step back. There are certain programs like engineering and nursing that break even by year 2. That's amazing. It's a much faster return versus some like the arts, it might take 7 years. So we just have to think through how we can reduce that time to degree and create embedded micro-credentials or other types of experiences that are going to create an accelerated wage and meeting the workforce needs, but also meeting the needs of the passion of the student of what they want to receive it as a degree.
I have a quick question. Why is financial aid not included? I understand you're looking at the return on investment for the student, but we should be looking at the return on investment for the entire input, which is the taxpayer and the student, and we should be trying to get the return on investment on the total investment, which obviously is the scholarship or the financial aid is coming from a taxpayer. So why is that not included?
It's not included. It is taken out of the student investment piece. So
get
it's,
that.
so we're looking at kind of what is the student ultimately paying? And then I think sort of on the return of investment to the state, then we think about kind of David's slide around the ultimate taxable income that students are ending up with, and sort of the state achieving value ultimately when that student has these much higher wages and the workforce, and then is paying, taxes back to the state on those higher wages. So I think that it's taken out on the front end, kind of, and then we're seeing that return on the back end through those higher wages to the state.
I understand it's a good value proposition. I get that, but I'm just thinking if you're looking at what degree programs you're trying to encourage, you want to encourage the degree programs that are giving you the most return to investment for the entire input, which is the taxpayer and the student.
So I definitely think based off the data that we have, we can actually do that type of creative analysis to understand. I know when I was at University of Texas System, I was really interested in state appropriations and what contributes to earnings outcomes. And what we found through had done is for every dollar that the state invested, it actually produced $5 of earnings, of taxable earnings for a student. So we could do a similar analysis of thinking about Texas Grant, the investment in Texas Grant, and how that leads to economic prosperity, not only for the student, but also for the state.
So your 3-year payback analysis, it's interesting that year 3 is close to break even on the numbers. And so I'm wondering what, I mean, to me, 3 years is like yesterday. To an 18-year-old, it's probably forever. But I'm wondering what we could tweak from a grant standpoint, from a, in order to narrow that to a 2-year payback, which is probably more in the horizon of a student. Because it looks like it wouldn't take much just to move that up a year.
Yeah, I think in this, and Maria's example at ABCC, you're right, it wouldn't take much. I think if she, probably using her example, if she had gotten through school, in 2 years or 2.5 years rather than 3, she probably would have hit that positive ROI in year 2. So I think a lot of it, comes back to that time to degree, and getting students out more quickly.
Another thought would be to educate employers that as a quote signing bonus or something, they would recruit students because it's small money, overall to them. And so you could argue, listen, here's a list of employers that will pay back your student debt on top of hiring you. And that might be something we ought to look into with the Workforce Commission.
Absolutely. And I think also working with TAC and Ray Martinez to really understand the different types of levers that are being changed at the community college end based off House Bill 8, and keeping track of that so that we understand the community college relationship with employers and the relationship between the student and the employer. Because what we heard from the student panel is education is a foot in the door technique to get them the access they need and agency to need to get a good job. And so it's exciting time to be in coordinating board, honestly, to really think through all these great questions.
I think go ahead, Mr. Clemmer.
I had a question. So this is very impressive. I think it's really important for the parents as well as the students to have information of this. How do they know how to get to this? I mean, their advisors, through their advisors, may not be sufficient. Are we doing anything to market this to the parents of like K through or 12th and 11th grade to be sure that they know about this and how easy it is to use and the value associated with it?
Yeah, so Mr. Clemmer, you've teed us up perfectly for an item that's on the agenda later today. So we through My Texas Future as the primary way that we're communicating things to students, we have a marketing campaign underway for My Texas Future, and you have a board item on the agenda later today to are getting the word out to students and families, about this kind of earnings and wage information and what's associated with various credentials.
Okay, if we're going to cover it at that time, I'll wait. But thank you.
But with that said, I think we have to maintain a pulse for our students and parents so that when they're ready to receive the information, it's there, right? Because that's the challenge that we face is that one might argue students and parents aren't thinking about this daily like Sarah and I are every day. But how can we create an experience to meet them where they're at so that they have this? And branding My Texas Future is key. So I think about a 15-year-old about to turn 16 to get a driver's license. I bet you I know they know where to go to sign up to get that license, right? Texas.gov. But I want that kind of mindset for students to think, okay, additional education, My Texas Future.
But you may not have exactly the same incentive as getting a driver's license to drive. But, a mass mailing, email mailings are not expensive. And, something that goes out to every parent. And, I'm sure you can get the demographic of the parents of, 15 to 18-year-olds. But, even making it annoying that it's in front of them so that they get to the point where they take advantage of it. Because, just telling a counselor, a kid comes home or when they're talking to the parent, I'm not sure that that's going to be enough. You need something that's really making it, it's in their face so that they have to really think about it.
Absolutely. And so in the forthcoming months, we'll be presenting some information around direct admissions and how the role of interacting with middle schools and high schools on getting this information to them in the hands so that there's a lever to pull there as well. So we'll be presenting that in the near future.
Commissioner, go ahead.
Well, while the conversation was centered on credentials of value today, we've talked about a lot of other things that are really important and are ongoing efforts of the agency. So we know that families and students understand the importance of higher education and the value. And if you look on down that slide of the things that are barriers and concerns, family support isn't one of them. Only 8% of respondents, both parents and students, said that family support was a barrier. So families are supportive of the education. So I think, Mr. Clemmer, the way you just articulated it, how we ensure they understand the resources that are available through My Texas Future and other tools. Well, then that brings in data modernization. So we're continuing to seek to improve the agency's data systems, the legacy systems, our security and privacy, but also the ability to do this really sophisticated analysis and then communicate it back in a usable form so that, Ms. Walschlager, students and parents can make informed choices. And so there are credentials that we know that are essential, but don't pay as much. But the student needs to understand that as they go into a program of study, not once they've incurred debt and cost and then get to the job market and see, oh, wow, this doesn't pay as much as I hoped it would. And so, financial aid is a really important component of that. We know that need is an issue and concern for our students. And finally, I think things that the agency is doing, like open educational resources. This agency's work, just for nursing students alone, has saved students $25 million in curricular materials. Well, so that's an institutional choice to use OER as opposed to textbooks and other materials for which the student has to pay an out-of-pocket expense. So Deputy Commissioner Keaton talked about the student, Maria, graduating sooner. So if you'd enrolled full-time that semester, she was half-time, that student choice would influence the calculations. Likewise, if the institution adopts OER and other cost-saving measures, there's less cost there on the student's behalf. And so you have institutional decisions, student decisions, family decisions interacting all to inform this formula. And what we need to do is help students understand that going into the process. So it's a lot going on with this one example. It ties a lot of the things that the agency's working on and has been working on together.
And I was just going to mention tagging along with Mr. Clemmer said, I think this is really that case study. I like that of Maria. And I think going back to how we get that in front of people, 9th and 10th graders study math. Everybody does, and geometry. And that example in front of those kids at those ages would see the difference and really get in their minds, I think would be a great idea for our math teachers in our high schools in the state to present that as a case study. And the students, that'll get their attention and prepare early to go on and get a credential and move forward. So that's a great idea, I think, in terms of what the case presentation does and what we need to do, tie it in with the community colleges and their credentials of value. Good presentation. Enjoyed it.
And to build on that, you could explicitly let students play around with what is available on the website value, but also show them how time to completion is one of the most powerful levers in their toolkit, and help them be aware of some of the tools around time to completion, as far as making sure that they have a mapped out course completion plan that gets them on track. One question I had, you commented at the beginning that the value of credentials varied by student demographic.
Mhm.
Can you give us an example of where, like, a specific credential, its value varies based on the student demographic?
Sure, absolutely. So with our data, we can actually disaggregate by race, ethnicity, gender, and income status. And what we can see in the data is that, especially in STEM and high demand areas, when a student of color or a woman goes into mathematics, into the field, um, on average, they're making around $5,000 to $7,000 less a year than a white or Asian male who had received the same credential from the same institution the same year. And so we need to figure out how we can be transparent about that and how we can resolve that.
And do we have any underlying further information about, you know, how they did academically, the internships they had, et cetera, to support their marketability?
I think so. I think we have information around their coursework. I think the challenge that we have is the limitations with the TWC's UI wage records, where we don't have occupation. So we know their industry that they're working in. They might be going to the food industry. They might be going, so we know that avenue. I can't tell you what job they have. Is it a manager role? Is it a non-manager role? And, but I do know when we look at longitudinally over time, what we see is that gap that exists with earnings widens over time. So for some students, so in engineering, by year 10 of earnings outcomes, that gap can be around $25,000 per year based on gender or race ethnicity. And so I don't know if that is a regional effect. I don't know if that's an occupational effect. So we just have to push ourselves to do better to tell that story and explain what's happening with those differences.
Any other comments or questions for our panel? Great job. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll now move on to agenda item 7, matters relating to the full board. Agenda item 7A is an update on the Texas Higher Education Foundation. Melissa Henderson, Executive Director of the Texas Higher Education Foundation, will present this item and be available for questions. Ms. Henderson.
Good morning, Chairman and members. My name is Melissa Henderson. I serve as the Executive Director of the Texas Higher Education Foundation. Our Chair and President, Neil Adams, sends his regrets that he's not able to be here today. Next slide. So today we'd like to update you on some of the ways that the Texas Higher Education Foundation has been partnering with the Coordinating Board to catalyze strategic investments over the last year. First, a quick refresher on the focus of the Foundation's work. Our mission is to support the agency's strategic priorities and further the goals of building a talent-strong Texas. The Foundation fosters strategic partnerships internally within the agency and externally with key stakeholders to position the Coordinating Board as a national thought leader in higher education policy and workforce development, and to raise private funds to support Coordinating Board partnerships and priorities. Next slide. Briefly, I'd just like to introduce and acknowledge the strategic partnerships team that supports the work of the Foundation. Dr. Catherine Moss is the communications manager. Maeve Leahy is the assistant commissioner for partnerships and project management. Virginia Berry is the director of state and national partnerships. And of course, I already introduced myself. I serve as the executive director. Next slide. Since its formation in 2001, the Foundation has raised more than $41 million to advance higher education in Texas in partnership with the agency. Almost half of that total, $20 million, has been raised in the last 5 years, and you can see here across a number of different areas of work. Next slide. Currently, the Foundation is managing approximately $8 million in active grants. This funding supports a wide array of strategic initiatives in areas across the agency. This slide provides an overview of the various agency projects and initiatives catalyzed through private funding. It also gives a sense of the magnitude of resources our team is working with programmatic leads across the agency to manage. Many of these grants are complex, requiring in-depth cross-agency collaboration and external partnerships to turn ideas into outcomes. Next slide. This visual illustrates the cross-divisional nature of the foundation's partnerships within the agency. As the slide shows, foundation funding supports many different types of work at the coordinating board, including data analytics and innovation to help create and increase awareness of new data tools, academic affairs to develop student-centered college and career resources, both of which we just touched on in the prior presentation, and workforce education to create innovative ways for students to transition from academics to the workforce successfully. Foundation dollars also help expand the reach and elevate the coordinating board's annual Higher Ed Leadership Conference through sponsorships. Next slide. As an example, the direct admissions development and rollout is but one example of how philanthropic support catalyzes work at the agency. As you all know well, the direct admissions feature in My Texas Future is a unique tool designed to simplify the college admissions process for students and families across Texas. Phase 1 of this work, launched in October of last year, was funded entirely through philanthropic support. As the coordinating board plans for Phase 2, which aims to streamline admissions further by connecting administrative data sets and exploring potential financial aid linkages, the foundation remains committed to securing philanthropic support to scale this program. Next slide. Another key area of impact has been the development of new data tools. Philanthropic funding supported the launch of a secure data portal that provides institutional leaders with advanced metrics on student persistence and graduation, labor market outcomes, and transfer trends. The foundation also utilized grant funding to help facilitate a convening of higher education leaders to help train them to use the features of these tools. Private funding was also paired with public dollars to Data Bridge. This interactive tool provides insights into higher education trends, including pre-college data, enrollment figures, and student outcomes. To support its launch, grant funds were also used for a statewide marketing campaign to raise awareness of this valuable resource. Next slide. 2024 was a significant year for the Texas Higher Education Foundation and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, advancing new initiatives while enhancing and promoting existing tools designed to support students, institutions, and communities across Texas. It's an exciting time as we see our partnerships bringing tangible benefits to students and families while furthering efforts to increase access and attainment in higher education. We've built a solid foundation and look forward to continuing the momentum in the year ahead. Thank you, and with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Henderson. Any questions or comments?
I just felt compelled to say thank you for the work the foundation is doing. It's amazing that you guys help to advance our goal together. And I haven't been involved too much in the foundation, but throughout those years, I see your work, and it's just we're so lucky, we're so blessed that we have the foundation with us.
Thank you for
matching to work together.
noticing that, being part of it on the foundation. Thank you to the foundation, to if you look at the board members, impressive Texans that are on that board that are very well connected, and that is allowing the coordinating board and Texans in higher education to be able to do things that we can't through other funding mechanisms. And I thank the board members and the chair, Neil Adams, and Melissa for the work that you're doing. The foundation provides the coordinating board and impacts higher education in Texas other ways that we couldn't. So thank you for all the work that's being done by the foundation.
Thank you, Dr.
I want to
Walker.
also second the comment about, I guess this foundation is supporting the Higher Edge conference, and the conference that I went to. I thought it was very impressive. The student panel I thought was amazing. The feedback and just the discussions that they had and the speakers. It was a great conference. So thank you to the foundation for supporting the Higher Edge, because I thought it was very, very worthwhile.
Absolutely. No, Higher Edge is a team effort across the agency, and the foundation is really pleased to be able to have a role in supporting that incredible convening.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Henderson.
Thank you, Chairman.
Agenda item 7B is an update on the 2026 through 2027 budget. Sarah Keaton, Deputy Commissioner of Administration and Operations, and Anthony Infantini, Chief Financial Officer, will provide an overview and be available for questions. Ms. Keaton.
Good morning. So this is hot off the presses. The budget was just released yesterday. So this is our initial quick read of what's going on. We're definitely still making our way through both bills. But starting on the next slide of the slide deck, just kind of a timeline refresh for where we are in the budget process. Pursuant to your approval in July of our LAR, we submitted that legislative appropriations request. We submitted that in August. We had our joint budget hearing in September. And then this month, the controller released the biennial revenue estimate. And then the session began the next day. And then yesterday, both the House and Senate released their introduced versions of the budget. So next slide. Speaking of the controller's biennial revenue estimate, the BRE, he released that the legislature has $194.6 billion available for general purpose spending. This is at really historic high levels. And additionally, that includes a budget surplus of almost $24 billion remaining from last session. So this is the beginning balance or surplus is a little bit less than what the legislature started with last session, but also really remains at historic high levels. So we are definitely in a surplus budget situation this session. So moving 2 slides forward to the next one, Anthony is going to talk a little bit about kind of our coordinating board budget in the introduced bills.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. So going back to our appropriations request, we submit what's called a baseline budget, which is from direction of the governor and the legislative offices. And then we are able to request exceptional items above what that baseline request was. So we had a base that were approved, totaling $752 million, to get a total request of about $3.53 billion. Now, most years, if you can get your baseline budget in the introduced bill, that's great. If you can see, the House and Senate had identical introduced budgets for the coordinating board, and that was at $3.36 billion and 340.9 FTEs. So if we move forward to the next slide, I'll walk you through kind of how that maps out. So for our exceptional items, we had again 3 kind of main items: our financial aid item, our research item, mostly the TRIP balance that we talked about yesterday in committees, and also our technology modernization, which was money that we had in our current budget, but was treated as one time because it came through us through our supplemental appropriation. I touched on this in July, but it was more of a technicality. We kind of made that point that it really was not one time thing and kind of needed that going forward for some of the agency's efforts. So as you can see in the introduced budgets, while the financial aid item was not put in the budget on the introduced version, the TRIP balance was restored, the TRIP backlog was funded at a level of $409 million, but we put an asterisk there to kind of they're contingent on legislation passing, which basically repeals the TRIP program going forward. So it wouldn't be an ongoing backlog that would continue. The intent appears to be to fund it, get rid of the backlog and kind of avoid these backlogs going forward by no longer having that program. And then our technology modernization funds of $15 million was approved in both budgets, which was great because, like I said, those were ongoing operational costs. So the total of our exceptional items that were in that introduced budget was around $390 million. Go to the next slide.
Before you go to that next
Yes.
slide, can you be more specific about, so their proposal is that the funding of $409 million, which is above what was requested, would be a one-time, but then only with the program being discontinued after this period?
Correct. So the way the budget has historically worked is kind of a level appropriation of about currently is like $16.5 million per year. And then there's a backlog that gets presented to you kind of regularly as far as once appropriations are available will be kind of released. What the rider does is appropriates $400 million, which is to try to estimate like where our current backlog is, try to zero out the backlog, but also say this is contingent on legislation being passed that repeals the program itself. So it's kind of a contingency rider, they call it, but It's in the budget, but there will be legislation that will be required in order for that to become fully effective.
And so it would only be approved if the program was discontinued going forward.
Correct.
What I understand?
Yeah, they put the money all in 2026 to pay out the balance in 2026 and nothing
And then
going
discontinue the
forward. Yes.
program after that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then the remaining changes were kind of budget changes from our request. The only real programmatic change is that first item, the GME. Both bills added $71 million equally, which is about a 30% increase to that program. So it's quite a sizable impact. And then the Baylor College of Medicine item, while that's above our baseline, I kind of want to point out that is not a huge increase in that dollar amount. That money is pulled out of our baseline request every year. It's treated as a formula funding request like other HRIs or health related institutes. So to put some and the funding in 26 and 27 was $115 million in the introduced bills. The other two items were more either an estimated adjustment or the mental health consortium. There was a one-time unexpended balance that was included in our baseline, but they didn't want, it seems there was a minor adjustment to kind of level set that to the current appropriations level. But yeah, that is, kind of walks us forward to the introduced budget for the coordinating board at a high level. It's a
Yeah.
or-
So,
yes.
Anthony, for the newer board members, can you explain when you first look at this, you see Baylor College of Medicine and the way the general revenue works on their funding. Of course, they're a private HRI, health-related institution as far as funding is concerned, and they appear on this. Is that a good question for you or government relations?
So the funding for Baylor College of Medicine, the legislature has been funding Baylor College of Medicine for several decades, and the formula funds that go to Baylor are set in statute to be consistent with the funds provided for other public health related institutions, and it just flows through the coordinating board as kind of a funding mechanism to pass the funds through to Baylor. But it is really a decision that is made on the health-related institutions, and then consistent with that, they fund Baylor just through our budget.
Yeah, so we're just the conduit to fund it.
Yep. Yeah, but it's not discretionary on our part, and we don't set the amount of funding that goes to Baylor.
It's just one of those items but we don't get to request it in our baseline, so it may look like a budget increase, which is just kind of, we want to call that out for comparison purposes. More to come on that, and then I think
And then
Sarah
we've got
will
it.
talk.
Yeah, we've got a few slides just kind of covering the budget and both introduced bills for higher education generally as a sector outside of the coordinating board. So first, next slide, I'll cover formula funding in both the House and Senate bill. So formula funding in the House, health-related institutions are largely maintained at 24-25 levels. The general academic institutions or GAIs in the House, their instructional I&O rate is decreased. Their infrastructure rate is slightly increased. Funding for the Lamar State Colleges is increased in the House. The funding for TSTC, total GR, is maintained at level funding. And then Community College Finance maintains the fiscal year 25 funding. So that is sort of very big picture in the House. There's a lot of formula mechanics, happening underneath that we'll continue to work through with institutions in the legislature. And then moving forward to the next slide, on the Senate side, there's a lot that's the same. Health relateds are also generally maintained on the Senate side. On the general academics, those are a little bit different in the Senate than in the House. On this side, both the instruction and infrastructure rates are rather than increased. TSTCs are largely level. And then again, community colleges are consistent between the House and the Senate. So we will work closely with the institutions to understand kind of more in depth of what's happening here, and also go back and take a look as we have time on how this compares to the Formula Advisory Committee recommendations that were brought forward to the board and that the board approved last summer. So moving to the next slide, a few non-formula items happening in higher ed of note to point out. Both bills include $1.3 billion for new institutions to either enter into or move tiers between the Texas University Fund that was established last session. So adding additional institutions or moving those up requires kind of a hold harmless buy-in so that as new institutions enter, institutions who are currently in there are sort of held harmless. So both introduced bills include $1.3 billion for that purpose. Both bills also include $850 million for a new endowment for Texas State Technical Colleges, contingent upon passage and voter approval of a constitutional amendment. And then moving to the next slide, just some non-formula related items. Both bills increase total research funding for the general revenue research funds that general academic institutions receive, sort of maintain the current rates in those research formulas at GAIs. And then both bills decrease funding for institutions. Bills also include a rider for general academic institutions indicating legislative intent that tuition not be increased for the next 2 years. So that's kind of a very quick summary, and happy to answer any questions
comments
on
or
that.
Questions for the panel?
Quick question on what is the constitutional amendment?
So this is this would require, I
For
think
the-
for the TSTC, the new endowment. So that would just be voter approval of the constitutional amendment to create that fund, which would make that funding constitutionally dedicated and therefore not subject to the spending limitations. And kind of on that note, I mean, I think it probably is important to point out that both bills are within the constitutional spending limit as well as the comptroller's revenue estimate for next session.
Quick question. What universities are being considered to be added to the Texas University Fund?
So the what's included in both bills is just 1.3 billion, which would cover 2 institutions either entering the fund or moving up tiers. I think that Texas State University and University of North Texas are both close to Corpus Christi is the closest institution to being eligible to enter the fund into the lower tier.
So we're fortunate to have Deputy Commissioner Keaton, who is experienced in the Legislative Budget Board. We have these discussions, and I learn all the time about all the intricacies of all these figures in the formula funding. And I want to thank our committees, our advisory committees. As y'all know, last summer we worked on all this. The board did, and the advisory committees, who are the folks that really dig into the numbers and along with the institutions. And so there's a lot of work that goes into this. Obviously, very important work to get it ready for the Legislative Budget Board, to get it ready for the House and the Senate.
Yeah. And we've got just one last slide that just kind of goes through next steps, kind of where we go from here. So now that we have the introduced budgets, we have the chance to revise and review our exceptional items. I think at this point, we really just have one exceptional item that would cover financial aid. And then the piece of our research item that was not funded also relates to financial aid. So I think we can just call that now one big exceptional item with several parts for financial aid. Then we'll move into committee hearings. Commissioner Rosser will be testifying in Senate Finance, I think on February 5th. And then we'll move into House Appropriations from there. Then both chambers will move forward with amending their bill, pass their committee version of the bill. Conference committee will meet later in session to reconcile those 2 versions. They'll also work on a supplemental bill, which will be important for community college finance this session, and then ultimately the governor's signature and veto period at the very end of session.
So is there anything that's not on our list, but if we had the money, we would undertake in order to kind of fast track student success?
I mean, I think, right now, from an exceptional item standpoint, I think we're really focused on financial aid, but there's, many other legislative kind of items and bills and programs that we'll be working with the legislature on to kind of figure out, some of those could involve additional funding. Many of them would not, but that'll be kind of an ongoing process, I think, during session.
Any other comments or questions for the panel?
maybe offline, I'd like to just understand a little more on TRIP. TRIP was the one that was set up just a couple years ago, right?
TRIP has existed for, I think, between 10 and 15 years.
Okay, so maybe I'm thinking about a different one. If you could just talk to me during the break, perhaps, and
Absolutely.
clarify it for me, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's one, I think what you're thinking of is the recent, there's one we'll talk about that certain universities have. It's a newer one. Ms. Thomas, I know you're online. Any questions or comments? I'm watching in case you raise your hand. So thank you for.
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let us know if you have any comments or questions for panels as well. Thank you. Okay. Thank you all very much. Next, we will move on to agenda item 7C, which is an update on the Texas transfer initiatives. Elizabeth Mayer, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs, will present this item and be available for questions. Ms. Mayer.
Good morning, Chairman and members. Nice to see you all. My name is Elizabeth Mayer. I have the pleasure of serving as the Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs. And as I do during every quarterly board meeting, I'm going to provide an update on the work that we're doing regarding transfer. As you'll recall, during the October board meeting, the policy discussion was focused on the idea of predictability and portability. And for our transfer students, that is essential. We want to make sure that they know what they're going to be taking is going to be transferring, so they know what they need to take, and that it will actually transfer and apply. So just as a reminder, so the Texas Transfer Framework was established in March of 2021, and that was really an effort that was based on a work group that was actually led by Ray Martinez, who is at Tech. So just want to call him out, as well as Stacy Silverman, who's also in the audience, that helped with that effort. So after long work done with the work group, we met, I think, 20 times for an hour and a half over several weeks, several months, to kind of talk through what are the challenges with transfer. Initially, the plan was to have those discussions in person over a weekend, but COVID happened, and things changed. So it was actually a really good opportunity for 5 individuals from community colleges and 5 individuals from the universities to talk through what the barriers were and kind of own their own challenges with transfer. So after that fantastic work, rules were developed, which eventually became the transfer framework that were adopted by you all in March of 2021. Part of that effort also looked at the fields of study. So we had a 5% usage rate for the fields of study, even though it has existed since 1997. So we were not doing a great job in utilizing the fields of study. So after all of that work was done, we develop the rules. So the intent of all of this is really to optimize the students' course selections, ensuring that they take the right courses that will be applicable upon transfer, leading to them beginning at the 4-year institution with junior standing and not having to take additional courses that cost students time and money, which can lead to potentially them not completing the credential at all. Okay, so next slide. So all of that is to say we have developed Texas Direct. So there are 2 components to Texas Direct. One is that field of study component. So as I said, recognition, it was not going well in terms of the utilization. So the new rules have 3 specific pieces for the fields of study. So the first is the discipline-specific Texas core curriculum, and these are the core curriculum courses that are relevant for the major course of study. So one of the challenges that was brought up in the work group is, so say a student is going to major in a STEM field. So the student could take college algebra, but that's actually not what they need. They need statistics or calculus. So the fields of study calls out the potential, the math that they might need so that they don't have to go back and take the appropriate math for their specific discipline. So that's one component. That second component is the discipline foundation courses. And these are a set of courses within a major course of study that the student needs to take in order for the student to be successful in their upper division coursework. The third piece is this directed electives piece. So this is acknowledging that some universities have kind of different things that they're going to want the student to have had at the lower division to be successful in upper division courses upon transfer. So these are collected from each of our universities so that we know the lower division courses that the student is going to need. And so those are typically 2 courses or 6 hours that the universities would provide. So that is the 3 components for the field of study. So the other piece of the Texas Direct is completion of the core requirement. I do want to call out, last April, you all approved rules for the alternative field of study. And part of that is really to consider if there's too many lower division coursework for the discipline, instead of them completing the complete core at the community college, they would complete only 30 hours potentially at the community college and then complete the rest of them upon transfer so that they have all the lower division coursework for the discipline at the community college. So those are the 2 pieces that comprise the Texas Direct. And so, as I said, so Texas Direct is going to provide more transparent and seamless process for students and institutions. And this is also intended to ensure that the credits earned by the students transfer and apply. So next slide. So this is an update about where we are for each of the fields of study and what we have completed thus far and kind of what's in the queue. So far we have completed 12 revised fields of study. And as a reminder, these, there's 12 that we have done. This is a significant amount of work for our institute. Participate. This is typically 8 hours minimum of time for them to talk through what courses are the students going to need in order to be successful. So really discussing and working through those components of the fields of study. And then, so just in terms of an update, so biology, the subcommittee actually reconvened based upon the alternative field of study. They developed something and then they took it to the Texas Transfer Advisory Committee. They had some concerns and some questions. So we are actually going to go back to the subcommittee to work through some of the things that were brought up in the Texas Transfer Advisory Committee meeting. They were concerned about the number of hours at the lower division. So we're going to reconvene them and work through that again. Exercise science, that is actually out for public comment right now. So as part of this process and as part of the intent of that work group, some of the comments were that some folks that were not participating in the actual field of study meetings felt like they didn't have an opportunity to provide any feedback about what was developed. So as part of the process now, after a field of study is adopted by the Texas Transfer Advisory Committee and that recommendation moves forward, we then was not serving on the committee can still provide feedback. After that feedback is collected, if there's any concerns, we'll go back to the co-chairs and potentially to TTAC to work through that. And then after, if there are no issues or concerns that are raised, we will then go through the process of sending out a survey to our 4-year institutions to collect those directed electives. And then after that, it will then go to the commissioner for final review and approval. So that is kind of the trajectory in terms of exercise science. English had some challenges when we initially convened them. So we are reconvening them based upon the alternative fields of study. That is currently being scheduled. And so we'll likely have an update for you at the April board meeting. And then you can see there in the queue right now is computer and information sciences, engineering, and then the history. The BA had some challenges primarily due to the language requirement. So we will be convening those in the coming months and working through that with our faculty who serve on those committees, and hopefully we'll be able to develop those revised fields of study for our students to help with transfer. Next slide. I think that's my last one. Yes. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
I just want to say thank you to the committee, all the work. Commissioner will appreciate this when we have to go before the Senate and the House committees on, this is probably the question that will get a lot of transfer and issues. So make sure the commissioner has all that information because great work over the years, the last sections. That's probably one of the more popular questions that it's asked is, what are we doing about transfer? And the committee and the advisory board have done a really good job. So thank you, Elizabeth.
Yes. Yes, sir.
I do have a question. You said that there's a 5% utilization rate for the field of study. Utilization by whom? By the
Students.
By the students.
By students. So I think we looked back to see how many were using like the core curriculum and transferring. It's like 75%. So I think part of this effort, and we have 12, but they haven't been around for very long. So we're working with our data team to figure out how we're going to track that to ensure that we increase that number. I think there had been challenges in terms of students knowing about it, colleges utilizing it, and then us making sure that everybody understood how it worked. I'm doing a fair amount of presentations to kind of make sure everybody understands what this looks like now and to make sure our students understand. And in addition, we've also put a module on the on-course so that our advisors understand what this looks like so that they can be sure to share the information with students. Because part of the issue is too, I think there was potentially a lack of understanding that if a student was field of study complete, they don't have to take any other lower division coursework based on the law. So just conveying that, like, this is a really good opportunity for a student not to have to take additional courses. And if they're core complete, they should be done with all their lower division coursework and should be in that junior standing.
Quick, you may have already answered this, but I just want to make sure. So if a student takes all the courses of the field study, all the universities in Texas will have to
Yes.
abide by that.
Yes.
What about independent colleges and universities? Are they part of that process?
They aren't. They are not part of that process right now.
Okay.
Because
I mean, some students do transfer to
yes,
independent
yes,
colleges
and we don't
universities.
track that. To my knowledge, we just because how the statute, it's just for our public institutions. Because part of the issue is all of our community colleges are required to use the academic course guide manual. So those are the list of courses. Our four-year partners don't have to use the ACGM. They typically have those courses and then they're cross-listed, but the private universities have their own courses.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. Is there any opportunity, at least if a student wanted to transfer from a private university to a public, is there any kind of portal where we could make that easier if they decide?
Was there a way to incentivize the independent colleges and universities to adopt it?
I think that's probably worth a discussion. That has not been our historical focus.
I
Yeah.
think this is great, by the
Yeah.
way. I went to a community college and
Yes.
then went to Texas Tech, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
But that was a long time ago. So
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
it's great that you guys are taking on this effort.
I mean, those are discussions that could happen because those scenarios do happen.
Yes.
Yes.
Private to public and the public to private.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think once we have all this figured out
Yes.
100%, we ought to
Like that.
consider transfer back and forth between the privates.
Yeah, we can talk to the ICUT folks, right?
Yes.
About
Yes.
that. That's good. Okay, any other comments or questions for Ms. Mayer on this topic? Thank you. If not, we'll move on to agenda item 7D, an update on program approval. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available for questions. Ms. Mayer.
Okay. So, as with transfer, I typically provide an update on program approval. Y'all know we have been on this journey with program approval since about October of 2022 when the rules were adopted, and all of the fantastic work that we've been able to do in partnership with our institution. So next slide. Okay. So these are the goals that I usually provide for this update because I think they really ground the work, and it was developed initially before we even started writing the rules. So what we really wanted to accomplish here is we want to better align degree and certificate approval processes to the agency's refreshed strategic plan, Building a Talent Strong Texas. We want to bring agency rules and procedures in line with statute, minimize institutions' regulatory burdens supporting innovation, prioritizing the board meetings on the most meaningful program approval questions, and achieve the policy objective of having a comprehensive catalog of all credentials offered in the state. And then lastly, improve the administratability of program review and approval with policies and processes that are feasible, efficient, and flexible. And so, like I said, these were developed before the rules were adopted, but the significant rule revisions were adopted in October of 2022. So what I'm going to do today is also provide kind of an overview of where we've come and where we're going and give you a sense of kind of what that work looks like as of today. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. So very excited. Academic and Health Affairs and the Workforce Education, we have worked closely together to develop these new rules. And this work could not have been done without the partnership of both of those. But I also want to make sure I call out our PMIO team and the ISS teams. I also want to especially thank Dr. Emma Gelsinger on my team who has led this work really to streamline particularly the technology piece, which can be a little challenging around program approval, as well as supporting developing the new rules. I also want to thank our institutional partners because when you go through the revision of rules, new processes, new forms, it really is a partnership, and we appreciate their patience as we work through all of these changes. So Academic and Health Affairs and Workforce Education have collectively repealed and rewritten nearly all program approval rules, resulting in 15 new Texas Administrative Code subchapters consolidated in Chapter 2. So if you'll recall how this was done before is there was one chapter for our community colleges and then a different chapter for our universities and health-related institutions. We all know that's not really how higher education functions anymore. You have institutions that are our community colleges that are offering bachelor's programs. You have our 4-year and health-related that are offering lower-level certificates. So this is really trying to reflect how higher education has evolved. We've completed an overhaul of program approval forms and processes to streamline the work as much as possible. We had fillable PDF forms, so this is we've developed and launched 4 new online approval forms in our new portal. And then we've identified initial data in order to track for evaluating the effect of the online form implementation. Next slide. So in terms of next steps, so that's kind of where we've been. We had the 4 new forms. So we have our last form that is set to be hot off the presses. My understanding is the last form is set to launch on February the 21st. So we want to finalize and launch the University and Health-Related Institution Administrative and Program Changes form. So this is the last form that we had kind of on our pathway. So this form will include all administrative changes, including semester credit hour changes, degree program consolidation, program closures, administrative unit changes, and then any kind of funding model changes. So having this last form finalized will allow us to work out of one system because right now we're working out of 2. And this will make things easier for our team as well as the institution. So we want to finalize and publish updates required for the community and technical college degree and certificate form based on rule changes that were effective in the fall. And then it's about going back to kind of clean some of that up, revise some of it, refine some of it based upon the feedback we have received from our institutional partners. Next slide. Now I'm just going to give you kind of an update of what has been approved and what's kind of pending in the queue in terms of academic and workforce requests. And this is from October 11th, 2024 through January 7th.
Before you dive into that, I just want to say how much I appreciate the work that is going into this. I love process approval and simplification and being responsive to our institutional partners and streamlining things for the agency, for the board, for the whole landscape. So kudos for that work.
Thank you. I just want to emphasize this is a team effort. Like I said, PMIO, our project management team, and our technology team. Like this has been a pretty significant effort. A lot of this hadn't really been done before, so appreciate that very, very much. Okay, next slide. All right, so this is kind of gives you a breakdown of what has been approved during that time period. you can see there have been, let's see here, 25 new degree programs. And on the right there, you can get an idea of the disciplines that those are in. And then we've had 37 degree program changes, and then 64 planning notifications. And for the planning notifications, just as a form of reference, so those had historically, I think, only been required for doctoral and professional programs. Now they're required for everything. Part of that is also to give our team a line of sight in terms of what is going to be coming down the pike, so we know what kind of proposals we will be seeing from our institutions. Next slide. And then this is what we have pending in the queue. So we have 64 new degree programs. Most of those are in the health professions. It looks like 15. And then education has 6. So you can see there, there's a fair amount that we have going on, but the most significant are those new degree programs. Next slide. And then I just wanted to give you an idea of kind of in totality what this looked like for fiscal year 2024. So this was September 1st, 2023 through August 31st of 24. Again, I just want to thank the AHA team that works to get these reviewed and 2 directors. So this is a pretty significant effort considering the volume of things that we're able to accomplish. So again, very excited about the work that we're able to do with our partners, and excited particularly about the technology that we're able to utilize to kind of help move things and streamline things as much as possible. So I think that is my last slide, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Mayer?
I do have a question real quick. Can you compare our current workload compared to historic workload? Are you seeing
I don't-
uptake, or, it's the same?
Sort of. I think the volume is quite significantly more, particularly for the degrees. Yes.
So
we
it's a increase in work.
Yes. Yes. I'd have to go back and look at masters and bachelors, but I feel like for doctoral in particular,
Yeah, I'm
there's been
seeing
a pretty
a
significant
lot
increase.
of doctoral
Yes.
requests.
Yes.
But overall, in terms of the total number, seems to be pretty consistent.
I think it's still more. We can get you some more data. I mean,
Okay,
part of it
because-
too is the collection of certificates, which we hadn't really historically collected. Just getting a better idea of the totality of everything that the institutions are doing, which isn't something that we have historically done. And so part of it is that uptick in certificates as well. So because we want all the things that the institutions are doing, so we can count the 550.
So will that impact our efficiency? Because you have that 1 year window.
Yes.
So you have a
yes.
more
yes.
request.
Yes. And we're
still meeting the needs.
Yes, sir. So, and we're trying to streamline all of that as much as possible.
Okay.
Great. Any other comments or questions for Ms. Mayer? Thank you. If not, agenda item 7E is consideration and possible action to acknowledge gifts and donations to the board. This item was approved on consent. Agenda item 7F is consideration and possible action to amend the board approval to increase the contract amount with a vendor for the Texas Success Initiative Assessment version 2.0 TSI-A2 pre-assessment activity PAA. This item was approved on consent. Agenda item 7G is consideration and possible action to increase the contract amount for the Texas Han Media Incorporated for My Texas Future Initiative. Glenna Brune, Associate Commissioner for Public Affairs, and Anthony Infantini, Chief Financial Officer, will present this item and be available to answer questions. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner and board members. Thank you. Glenna Brune, Associate Commissioner for Public Affairs. For your consideration, this is a request to increase our marketing contract with Han to $3 million for My Texas Future campaign. I wanted to start by thanking you all for your forward-thinking support and encouragement for this campaign. This morning's conversation, I think, was a wonderful reflection highlighting the need for this. We want to make sure we are proactive in our approach and able to be nimble and anticipate the needs as we continue forward with My Texas Future. We're excited to be promoting this across Texas, reaching 98% of the state in this last flight, as well as working with the legislature and leadership on direct admissions and, as a result, My Texas Future. This impactful campaign will make a difference in the lives of Texas students, connecting the technology that we're implementing. These increased funds will allow us to continue our momentum, reaching possibilities through additional marketing. The contract includes creative development, implementation, reporting for statewide outreach, and engagement. The campaign is designed to increase awareness, adoption, and usage among Texas students in middle school, which we talked about the importance of that, and high school, and their families. The components of the campaign include videos and graphics shared on targeted TV channels, social media channels, and Google Ads. I want to point out that during the holiday, when campaigns like this are usually seeing a decrease, we actually stayed steady because of our focus on digital ads and TV marketing. This increase in funds will enable us to expand and lengthen our campaign with fewer interruptions and a wider audience reach, resulting in increased awareness and usage of My Texas Future, as well as a secondary campaign specific to direct admissions with video asset creation and creative assets that appeal to teens and prevent audience fatigue, which is important. Again, thank you for your support of this campaign and your own work pushing the word out on My Texas Future to get all students aware of the technology that's at their fingertips. And thank you for your consideration of this increase. I'm happy to take any questions.
What is there it's a significant increase in budget. Is there a plan to monitor the results along the way and be able to redirect the resources based on what's working or not?
Yes, sir, there is. Our communications and marketing teams, as well as some of our other teams, are consistently in contact with HON and redirecting as need be with things that are successful or that we aren't seeing the results we want to on. So
And this
where the funding will come and what this looks like.
but is it 3 months or 2 years?
I don't have the exact timeline on what that contract is. It will also be able to supplement some of the flights we already have. So if we want to expand what we're doing already in between some of our breaks, we can use it for that as well.
So I would say once you figure all that out, you might pick some midpoint time to come back and report to the board on how it's going and what you found out.
That's perfect. We will plan to do that.
Great. Anthony, do you have anything to add to that?
No, just to highlight the funding. We're using funding now, but also knowing that there may be legislation that impacts My Texas Future and/or direct admissions. This flexibility will allow us to respond now as opposed to September when most kind of decisions being made today go into effect or in the current legislation. So there's a lot of flexibility being built into this to allow us to kind of work within our timeline and even extend as possible because it is an ongoing item in our budget. And both introduced budgets have money for My Texas Future for 26 and 27. So there is commitment to fund this on an ongoing basis as well.
I guess I know it's a significant increase, but I would ask, if I believe that any student can go to a community college and university and get a degree, but it doesn't matter because I already did it. What I really want to answer is like, does every student in Texas know that they can do that? And so what I would ask is, how much are we spending on that program at Texas Future? And if we're only spending $3 million to make sure that it's marketed well, I would say, let's make sure that it's $3 million, but how much is the entire program? And if people don't know about it, it doesn't matter how much you're spending on a program if it's not being utilized. So I would think about it. What percentage of that 3 million is of the entire program that's being university they want, and that the resources are there.
Yeah, and I think this is such an important topic to be sure that it gets out to all of the students and parents associated with it. It would probably be worthwhile for you to come back with a board update in a future time with what your decisions are relative to how you're going to use those a 4X increase in funding to be able to accomplish it? Give us some indications of how you're accomplishing it.
We'd be happy to do that. And Han has provided some wonderful digital pieces for us to look at that show the percentages and how many parents are looking at the different channels that they have selected and why they've selected those channels, how this appeals to students, to eighth graders, to their families, and then also to high schoolers. I do also want to add that since October, we have had 300,000 views on My Texas Future and 20,000 profiles created. David gave me that information today. So that's a wonderful testament to how much this promotion and this campaign makes a difference to pushing attention to My Texas Future. And again, we are talking about this over the Capitol a lot. So we're increasing awareness and interest on a daily basis.
One of the things that you may consider having is having a way to get input as to how people find out about this Texas Future. So through the website, to be able to get input from first-time user to find out how do they learn to go to this website, so that helps you figure out how effective your marketing is.
Very good. Any other ideas or comments for our panel? Okay, thank you all.
Thank y'all. We look forward to reporting back more.
Okay, members, do I have a motion to approve the request to increase the contract amount for Texan Media Incorporated for My Texas Future Initiative from $750,000 to $3 million?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Wilson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nevares. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you all. Okay, at this point, I'd like to take a 10-minute break. It is now 10:54, so we can get started about 11:02. Okay, we'll take a break. Thank you. We are ready to get started. We're moving on to agenda item 8, matters relating to the Committee on Innovation, Data, and Educational Analytics. That's chaired today by Vice Chair Hawk in Mr. Anwar's absence. Ms. Hawk.
Thank you for joining us for matters relating to the Committee on Innovation, Data, and Educational Analytics. Yesterday in committee, we heard updates on building a talent-strong Texas Data Insights and the Financial Aid Advisory Committee. We also approved the minutes from the October 24 meeting and the certification of gifts fundable through the Texas Research Incentive Program, TRIP, and edits to board rules. Agenda item 8B is consideration and possible action to adopt the recommendation relating to the certification of gifts that are fundable through the TRIP program for emerging research universities. Mr. Andy McLaurin, Assistant Commissioner for Funding, will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Andy McLaurin, Assistant Commissioner of Funding and Resource Planning. The Texas Research Incentive Program, or TRIP, was established in 2009 to encourage universities to seek private donations for research purposes. The program is funded by state appropriations and provides matching funds for eligible gifts. Matching percentages have 3 tiers depending on the gift amount: 50, 75, and 100%. After internal review by our staff, we bring our recommendations forward to you all for official certification. As Anthony Infantini explained earlier, the introduced budget bills for both the Senate and the House include a rider which would fund the existing backlog of certified gifts, as well as any amounts certified by today's board action, contingent on an Today is certification of 39 gifts totaling $23.4 million, with a corresponding state match of $18.6 million. Any questions?
Members, are there any questions?
How does that compare with the total backlog then from the different universities?
The existing backlog is $382 million.
So a relatively small share of the existing backlog you're proposing then.
That's correct. And the way this would work is it's first certified, first paid. So any action taken today would go to the end of that list. But the rider in both bills would fund actions taken by today's board meeting.
Is there a plan to ask, since it's so far behind, is there an opportunity to ask that be funded current on some basis?
That is the proposal in the budget.
Not just not just the 18.6 million.
Correct. That's just us authorizing the most recent research gift.
Right, but there isn't, but the 382 backlog is in the,
It's in the budget.
good, okay.
409.
That's correct.
It
She
includes this.
she stated it more eloquently than I did, so.
And there's just a general consensus to shut the program down, though. We want to get it paid the backlog, and we're going to just say.
I can't speak to that. I can only speak to what we saw in the introduced budget bills yesterday. That certainly does signal that the budget writers have that intent. But of course, we're a long way from a final budget.
Do I have a motion to adopt the recommendation relating to the certification of gifts that are fundable through the Texas Research Incentive Program for emerging research universities?
Motion?
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 8C was approved on consent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda items 8D 1 through 9 are the proposed rules. Agenda items 8D 1 through 6 were approved on consent. Agenda item 8D 7 is consideration and possible action to adopt proposed amendments to board rules, Chapter 22, Subchapter 1, Sections 22-163 through 168, and 22-170, and new Section 22-169 concerning the Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program. Members, you have supplemental materials for this item printed on goldenrod paper. Dr. Quintero Poles will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Thank you very much. As we discussed yesterday, the proposed rules for the Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program are primarily non-substantive changes that are meant to improve the overall consistency and readability of our rules and ensure that they're fully aligned with statute and practice. The proposed rules on the Goldenrod paper do have an adjustment that was made based on public comment, and the change the number of years that eligible students would be able to receive the funding to a maximum of 6 years, which aligns with the statutory requirement that participants graduate within 6 years of participating in the program. That change would not affect any other eligibility provisions, but would really provide ROTC students with the flexibility that's needed to accomplish all of their ROTC requirements as well as their degree requirements. I'm happy to answer any of the questions you might have.
Members, does anyone have any questions? Do you feel there is possibly any perverse incentive to extending that full ride for 6 years beyond limiting it to 4?
I don't. I was kind of judging what I should or shouldn't say. Does really tie to some of the challenges that these particular students see in trying to combine their ROTC requirements and their degree requirements. And so it's more addressing the difficulty in accomplishing that in the short period of time rather than kind of creating a, take as much time as you want. So I don't think it does. And the students do have the requirement that they have to go on and serve their military experience, service, etc., in order for this to remain a scholarship. And so if they do stay longer and they don't do their service, they do end up, having to repay all of that.
I am hearing, I know we discussed yesterday anecdotally that some of the, more challenging degree programs combined with the ROTC, that it is a challenge to get it done in 4 years, even if you're being very diligent
Yes.
about that.
Yes, absolutely.
So that might be its own thing to dive into more.
I think you do have a good question because we're trying to encourage students to do it in 4 years. So by having something that gives them 6, I guess the question I have is what percentage of the students do years? And so what percentage students are we trying to target, trying to help by extending that 4 to 6, from 4 to 6 years?
I do not have that data available.
Okay.
We can get that data, but I do not have that data available for your current approval.
Okay.
So an answerable question, and probably engineering is the best example, a degree program that takes more than 120 hours and typically takes more than 4 years to complete. And so based on academic requirements plus the ROTC requirements. And ROTC commissioning often requires the students to have summer experiences with the service that they are aligned to, which then means they can't take summer classes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more just an expression of the reality, what it takes some students to complete, but fully acknowledging that, completing in 4 years or less than 6 is best. But I think it's part of part of the reality of course taking and the requirements that the ROTC students have. But we can certainly look at completion rates and how many semester students take advantage of the program.
Well, and I also know that service. So
I also think if the requirements are, 150 hours in total, including all of the ROTC requirements, then we should be setting an expectation that this will take many students 5 years to complete.
Yeah.
Based on these loads and based on these summer requirements, et cetera, whatever it may be, whatever the numbers are, just to round out that picture
mm-hmm.
for everyone involved. But Any other questions? Members, is there a motion to adopt proposed amendments to Board Rules, Chapter 22, Subchapter 1, Sections 22, 163 through 168, and 170, and new Section 22, 169, concerning the Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program? I have a motion by Chairman Frias. Second, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 8D8 was approved on the consent calendar. Agenda items 8D9 is consideration and possible action to adopt proposed amendments to the Board Rules, Chapter 22, Subchapter T, Sections 22, 550, 552, scholarship. Dr. Quintero Pols will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Thank you. As we discussed yesterday, the proposed rules relating to the Texas First Scholarship Program make non-substantive changes to the subchapter as part of our ongoing efforts to improve the clarity and readability of the rules. We did receive a public comment about this. However, in reviewing the rules, we determined that the rules did contain the information that was requested during the public comment, specifically information regarding the requirement to file a FAFSA or TASFA. As such, we did not make any changes to the proposed rules. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Members, any questions? Is there a motion to adopt proposed amendments to Board Rules, Chapter 22, Subchapter T, Sections 22, 550, 552, 553, and 555 concerning the Texas First Scholarship?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Navarez and second by Mrs. Walschlager. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. This concludes our portion of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning. During the Committee on Academic Workforce and Success meeting yesterday, the committee approved the following items: minutes from the October meeting, a compliance report for institutions under a certificate of authorization, the appointment of members to 2 advisory committees, a report on supporting underprepared students in Texas, continued progress and recommendations, a request from the University of Texas at Tyler to modify the degree program funding model for the Doctor of Pharmacy, 4 new degree programs, and updates to board rules. Agenda items 10B through 10E were approved on consent. Agenda item 10F is consideration and possible action to approve the request from the University of Texas at Tyler to modify the degree program funding model for the Doctor of Pharmacy. Elizabeth Mayer, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs, will present this item and be available to answer any questions. Ms. Mayer.
Okay. Hello again. Yesterday I went through kind of this item, but I know Dr. Frias had a couple questions. So I went back and I looked, and so the School of Pharmacy was actually passed by the legislature in 2013. And as part of that legislation, it stated that the school is not eligible for funding under the formulas established under Texas Education Code 61.059 for instruction, operations, or infrastructure. So that was what was put in place, and that was what was removed during the last legislative session. So what happened in 2013 is the school was established by the legislature, and then the program came and was approved with the stipulation that it wouldn't receive any formula funding. So this item is specifically just aligning with what the legislature did, which was repeal the Texas Education Code section and remove that restriction that prohibited the University of Texas at Tyler's College of Pharmacy from receiving that funding. So as is required per our rules, the University of Texas at Tyler submitted a substantive change request to change the degree program funding model from self-supporting to formula funded. And so that is what we are asking to do today. That concludes my remarks on this item. There is someone here from Tyler, Dr. Pamela Ochoa, if you have other questions as well.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am Dr. Pamela Ochoa. I am the interim dean for the Fish College of Pharmacy in Tyler at the University of Texas at Tyler. As Ms. Mayor mentioned, we are asking for approval to switch to formula funding. We were established as a private model, private institution, and so with that repeal of the prohibition for formula funding, we are asking for support to move forward with that substantive change to formula funding.
Do we have any questions,
Yeah.
Ms. Wilson?
How many students do you have in the school?
So currently we have it's a 4-year doctoral program. So our smallest class is 12 and our largest class is about 46. And so we are in exploratory phase of ascertaining what is our correct size, or what is the size that meets the needs of our students in East Texas.
Any other questions? If not, can I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Texas at Tyler to modify the degree program funding model for the Doctor of Pharmacy? Dr. Wong, second by Ms. Hawk. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. The motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Agenda items 10G1 through 10G4 are the proposed degree programs. We're going to go a little bit out of order and begin with number 4. Agenda item 10G4 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from the University of Texas at Rio Grande Valley for a Doctor of Optometry. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available for questions. Mr. Guy Bailey, President of UTRGV, and Mr. William Miller, Founding Dean of Optometry, are also available for questions.
Okay. As I mentioned yesterday, the University of Texas at Rio Grande Valley, UTRGV, is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Optometry, or OD, degree program that would begin in the fall of 2027. The proposed program would be offered in person to students in the Rio Grande Valley. UTRGV is dedicated to improving access to healthcare in the medically underserved areas of the region and has established successful medical and health-related programs. The institution plans to seek accreditation from the Accreditation Council on Optometric Education, or the ACOE. Now I'll hand it over to Dr. Bailey.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything you've done for us. You know, I celebrate my 11th year at UTRGV this summer, and we've had a great deal of success, in large part because of your help. We have programs, of course, in medicine, in podiatric medicine, the only one in the state. Our physical therapy program starts in August, and then our optometry program we hope will start in 2027. All of this means that we're making a significant difference in healthcare and in education in the Rio Grande Valley. We're beginning, by the way, to hire many of the people who went through medical school. They left to do residencies. They're coming back to the Valley. And so you're making a significant difference in the Rio Grande Valley. I'd also like to thank the University of Houston. They've been very supportive in this process. As you know, they have the only public optometry school in the state of Texas. They've been very helpful to us, and we thank them. And the third thing I want to do, Dr. William Miller, our dean, who started last week. Yeah, last week. When I interviewed him in December, I said, well, let's talk about, he said, when do you want me to start? And I said, well, next week. He said, no, we got to wait till January the 13th. So we started then. But I'd like for Dr. Miller to tell you just a little bit about himself. And I think you can see how eminently qualified he'll be to lead this school.
Yeah, good morning, all. So I'll give you a brief history of where I've been. I'm actually a graduate of Ohio State. I know that's painful in the state of Texas right now. I actually did my optometry degree at Ohio State. I did my master's, thank you. I did my master's degree in fellowship in cornea and contact lens at Ohio State. And I got my PhD at Ohio State in a obscure discipline called physiological optics, which today is called vision science. I then moved on to a freestanding institution at the Southern College of Optometry, where your illustrious chair is the graduate of that institution. That was a few years ago. I moved on to the University of Houston, served at the University of Houston for 16 years, serving as department services in the clinical sciences and in contact lens, and serving as chair of the clinical sciences department before moving on then to be the associate dean at the University of the Incarnate Word Rosenberg School of Optometry. And so, yes, I am a newbie, 2 weeks on the job. So that's a brief history of where I've been. I've also served on the National Board of Examiners in Optometry, which is important. And I just rolled off because of a necessity. I just rolled off of the Accreditors Council. So I rolled off of that 2 weeks ago.
So I think we're well positioned with leadership. There is a special need for optometrists along the border and in rural Texas. The state of Texas has fewer optometrists per capita than the nation does. And in the border counties and in rural counties, we have the urban counties have 2.5 times more than we do. So there's a real need there. We'll focus on recruiting there. As I said, we'll begin the hiring. He'll begin hiring his staff and his team very quickly, and we anticipate opening the doors August 2027. So thank you for your support.
Do we have any questions? Okay, if not, do I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Texas at Rio Grande Valley for a Doctor of Optometry?
So moved.
A motion by Dr. Farias,
Second.
second by Mr. Wilson. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank
very
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, agenda item 10G1 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from Texas A&M University for a Doctor of Philosophy in Visual Computing and Interactive Media. Dr. Elizabeth Mayer, giving you a promotion, will present this item and be available to answer questions. Dr. Alan Sams, Provost, Executive Vice President and Chief Academic Officer, Mr. Tim McLaughlin, Professor and Dean, College of Performance, Visualization, and Fine Arts, and Dr. Donald House, Senior Professor and Director of Visual Computing and Interactive Media in the College of Performance and Visualization and Fine Arts, are also available to answer questions. Welcome.
Texas A&M University is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Philosophy or a PhD degree program in Visual Computing and Interactive Media that would begin in the fall of 2025. The proposed program would be offered in person to students in College Station, Bryan, and Fort Worth. The proposed program builds upon their existing bachelor's program, MFA, and MS programs in visualization at Texas A&M University. It would only be the 5th program of its kind in the United States and the first in Texas. I'm going to hand it over to A&M to talk more about the program.
Good morning, everyone. As the Chief Academic Officer at Texas A&M University, and on behalf of President Mark Welsh, thank you for your consideration of the proposed PhD program in Visual Computing and Interactive Media. As you know, Texas A&M University is a research-intensive AAU university and one of only 2 land-grant universities in the state of Texas. We have the distinction of being only one of 22 universities across the country that are both an R1 and an Hispanic-serving institution. As the largest institution in the state and among the largest in the country, we're home to over 79,000 students, with over 5,200 students currently pursuing one of 90 PhD programs that we offer. We're committed to meeting our land-grant mission and addressing specific identified needs across the country. And to this end, we're currently prioritizing the expansion of graduate education to address increasing demands for a more skilled and advanced professional workforce in their chosen careers.
In support of the proposed PhD in visual computing and interactive media, the university has already committed $235 million in capital investment for new facilities and $5 million in faculty lines. The university has also secured $25 million to support the creation of a state-of-the-art virtual production institute and a $1 million endowed chair in visual computing. So we're truly excited about this new program and its potential, built upon our strength and the national reputation in to its success. With that, I'll hand the microphone over to the founding dean of the College of Performance, Visualization, and Fine Arts, Mr. Tim McLaughlin, for a few additional details.
Thank you, Provost Sams, and thank you to the board for the opportunity to present the Visual Computing and Interactive Media PhD program on behalf of the College of Performance, Visualization, and Arts. If you don't mind, I may say VCIM instead of the long name of the program here. So the VCIM is grounded in over 35 years of experience at Texas A&M and producing leading practitioners for the film, animation, and games industries with master's and undergraduate programs in visualization. We have hired over the past 4 years 6 tenure-track assistant professors and 1 full professor with specializations in digital twins, data visualization, mixed reality, computer graphics, computer vision, machine learning, robotics, AR, VR, and human-computer interaction. This year, we have 2 tenured faculty searches in progress. One is in visual computing and computer graphics with expertise in animation, visual effects, and content creation. Is for a director of the Virtual Production Institute. Next year, we will launch a search for a full professor that will take on the endowed chair in visual computing. As Provost Sams mentioned, the university is committed to a new building that will house the college and the VCIM program. That building is 5 years away. In the meantime, we have identified 10,000 square feet of space on West Campus, what used to be called Research Park. And on that west side, it will house the graduate program in visualization, so the Master of Science in Visualization, MFA in Visualization, and this new PhD program. This program meets needs in the state to drive innovation that is dependent upon AI-enhanced visual computing and interactive techniques to enhance the quality, usability, productivity, and safety in our state. These industries are a critical workforce. These needs are in advanced technology in media, entertainment, healthcare, transportation, advanced manufacturing, simulation, and training. The VCIM program is a keystone in the college's mission to cultivate interactions between the arts, sciences, and technology. Author of the program, Dr. House.
Thank you, Dean McLaughlin. On behalf of the faculty aligned with the proposed PhD program in visual computing and interactive media, I'm going to say it out again. I want to thank you all for your consideration of this program. I want to note that this program would be the first STEM program in an arts college in the state and one of very few in the world. I'd also like to convey the excitement and enthusiasm of both our faculty and our current graduate students for this new program. And so along with our provost and dean, we're open to any questions you may have.
So I was pleased to hear you mention artificial intelligence as you were looking at this, but it was kind of mentioned in passing as opposed to being a cornerstone of what you're trying to do, at least as I understood it. I think that it's really critical because with the emergence and the rapid emergence of AI specifically in this area, it needs to be front and center and a significant consideration. So I would encourage you to be sure that you take that counsel and try to see what you can do to bring the very rapidly emerging AI capability into the course as well.
I'm glad you asked that that question about the curriculum. So we have 2 required courses in the PhD program that all of our students will take. Everything else is different kinds of electives that they will take in different areas of the field. the one real technical course that everyone has to take is a course in AI. So that's at the front and center of this program. It's kind of, we feel that all of the subdisciplines that will be supported in this program are going to feed off of that central core of grounding in AI. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Just have a real quick question, real quick. I'm so excited to hear that you have the STEM program in the art. It's amazing. Combine these two together. I don't know. So you talk a little bit about the curriculum. So the student, basically, they will learn. They will be also, do they have a dissertation to write or
absolutely,
and
yeah.
in the future, are they going to be teaching, or are they going to be doing research, or are they going to be in the industry? What's your take?
The answer to your last question was all three.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Yes, I mean, we would hope that some would go into academics, some into like industry research labs,
Yes.
and other kinds of research.
So how do you train them as art in the area of art, and then bridge into the science?
So
you have
expect
different courses to train them?
Yes. We expect that they'll come in with, it is a STEM program, so we expect that students will come in with some kind of STEM undergraduate degree, but also with grounding in one of the arts that will, kind of round out that technical background that they have. So we're going to be looking for a special kind of student coming in. It's not going to be a huge program. We're currently targeting about 8 students a year, but we think that maybe actually a little bigger than that, but that's our target is 8 a year of students who have this special background and set of interests that go beyond straight, say, for example, computer science or engineering, and broaden that out with demonstrated interest in the arts and background in the arts.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. I cannot imagine that. I should imagine that in the future we'll have that Aggie eyeglasses to replace the Google eyeglasses. I can see that it's happening real quick. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Well, if I were 30 years younger and had a different set of talents, I would sign up for this. Do I have a motion to approve the request from Texas A&M University for a Doctor of Philosophy in Visual Computing and Interactive Media, or VCIM?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Clemmer, second by Dr. Wong. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
From
much.
Texas A&M, so we say, whoop, whoop. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I wanted Ashley Thomas to
Agenda item 10G2 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from Texas A&M University for a Doctor of Education in bilingual English as a second language and dual language education. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available for questions. Dr. Alan Sams, Provost, Executive Vice President, and Chief Academic Officer. Dr. Michael De Miranda, Dean, College of Education and Human Development. And Dr. Beverly Irby, Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs and Regents Professor, College of Education and Human Development, are also here to answer any questions you might have. Ms. Mayer.
Texas A&M University is seeking approval to offer Doctor dual language education offered 100% online that would begin in the fall of 2025. The proposed EDD would be the second program of its kind in the state, with the other being at A&M Kingsville, which is 262 miles away from Texas A&M University. As I mentioned yesterday, according to the latest U.S. Census Bureau American Community Survey data, there are 3.6 million residents, excuse me, ages 5 or older who speak English less than very well in the state, which is 13.7% over the overall population in Texas. And in addition, per the U.S. Department of Education's Office of English Language Acquisition, in 2022, Texas had the highest percentage increase in K-12 English language learner enrollment in the past 20 years and has surpassed California to become the top state with the highest enrollment of English language learners in the nation. So given that, I'm going to hand it over to A&M to provide an overview of their program.
Once again, thank you very much for the opportunity. As the Chief Academic Officer of Texas A&M University, and on behalf of President Mark Welsh, we want to thank you for your consideration of the proposed EDD and bilingual We're particularly excited and committed to supporting this proposed doctoral program designed specifically to address the critical and rapid growing needs across our state and country for scholars and practitioners focused on improving the quality of education of emergent bilingual students. This proposed program not only speaks directly to our land grant mission, but also to our institutional priority of expanding access to graduate education to address identified needs across our diverse state through online delivery. This program is built upon the nationally recognized faculty and leadership, not only in bilingual education, but also as leaders in offering high-quality online graduate programs, which I'll let the dean speak to more specifically in just a moment. The university is investing over $1.2 million to support and launch this much-needed program. We're truly excited about the new program and are committed, as you can see, to its success. With that, I'd like to hand over the microphone to Dr. Michael D. Miranda, Dean of our College of Education and Human Development, for a few additional details.
Thank you, Provost Sams, and good morning. I'd like to first of all thank you for the privilege of your presence this morning in hearing about this exciting program. My name is Michael D. Miranda, and I'm the Dean. I have the privilege, high privilege, of serving the faculty and the staff in the College of Education and Human Development at Texas A&M University. Today, I'd like to tell you of education in bilingual, dual language, and English as a second language program. As Ms. Mayer has mentioned, Texas has the highest percentage currently of students in the United States who are second language learners. This is about 21% of all students, more than 21% of all students in Texas public schools. Texas A&M University and our bilingual ESL program has over 25 years of success working hand in hand with our Texas Education Agency, the U.S. Department of Education to lead research and the preparation of training of teachers and district independent school district leaders in this field. In fact, Dr. Lara Alessio, who is in the audience today, is a nationally recognized figure in the United States in English as a second language, bilingual, and dual language learning. Dr. Lara, in fact, helped a 5-member team write our English proficiency standards that will be reinforced through this program. Okay? Evidence of the strength and quality and leadership of Texas A&M University is that we celebrate a 100% pass rate on our bilingual exam for our undergraduate students, and our Department of Educational Psychology faculty are among the nation's best. And to support this program. The college's 12 online degrees in MED, MS, and EDD have a long-standing record of being nationally recognized by U.S. News and World Report. In fact, these programs hold the rank of number 9 in the nation. However, 2 months ago, our sister or partner EDD program to this one in curriculum and instruction was recognized by the Carnegie Project on the Educational Doctorate as the premier number 1 program in the nation. With not only these indexes of quality, but of our faculty and our university's commitment to this program, I ask you for your full support in aiding us to serve the children of the state of Texas. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce my Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, Dr. Beverly Irby, to maybe provide a few little more details prior to questions. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Provost Sams. Thank you, Ms. Mayor. And thank you, Board. Thank you for being here and allowing us to be here. Like to hear a few words about some of the things that you've read about in the proposal. So I wanted to share or clarify a few items there. And I thought you might be interested in the, particularly in advertising of the for the faculty. How are we going to do that? And after the program is approved, hopefully it will be today, we will be advertising and having recruitment efforts, and that will begin with faculty advertisements first for the faculty in the Chronicle of Higher Education and other professional organizations, as all of our faculty recruitment programs are done. Recruitment strategies will include sharing the openings through the state and national bilingual education, dual language education, and ESL education organizations that focus on promoting English as an academic language. Social media via the College of Education and Human Development outlets will also be created, and all postings will be on the Texas A&M University jobs under open positions for faculty with all of the accompanying requirements. So based on the total anticipated faculty FTE by the 5th year of the program, there will be 11 faculty members. And the total projected headcount of the students by the 5th year of the program, of the projected student to faculty ratio would be 8-to-1. And that is consistent with our other doctoral programs in the college and the department. And it's adequate, and we found that to be adequate to support the proposed program. Additionally, you may be interested in the clarification related to funding, some funding supports for our students. We've set aside scholarships of $30,000 annually, or $2,000 for our incoming cohort members per year. And the Doctor of Education students will apply for a scholarship available for up to the 15 students per cohort per year by completing the bilingual ESL scholarship application. And scholarships will be awarded by the current BESL, or Bilingual ESL Dual Language Scholarship Committee, on a competitive review basis using the following criteria. They're new graduate students in the doctoral program. They have academic excellence in their past work with a minimum of a GPA of 3.5. Experience teaching students from a second language background. Experience in leadership positions working with second language students, and that they have participated in presentations or co-authored some papers or reports for their districts. And the awarding of the graduate scholarships in CEHD is aligned with the scholarship process used across our college. Also, we have set aside funds of $500 annually per student for their professional development. So this will assist them in traveling to conferences, such as the one coming up here in the next few days at the Texas Association for School Administrators. And also, this will help them to increase their learning activities and support their own campus professional development. Students will apply for the travel funds at least once a year, and the existing program scholarship committee will review the applications based on the established criteria. So they also will be competitive and will be reviewed by the committee. So I want to thank you for your time in listening to us about our new EDD program that we have proposed. And we want to know if you have any other questions related to this wonderful program. And actually, this is the only online program of this type nationally. So we're stepping out. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Just want to comment, thank you for bringing the program and providing it online to those that work and are going to be able to gain a great opportunity on such an important program. Thank you all.
I do want to make a comment. I'm a product of ESL. I came to the United States when I was 16 years old, and the first class I took was English as a second language. So it works. I'm still working on it, but it works. The other question I have is, what's the difference between bilingual and dual language? I mean, how do you differentiate those two?
Well, bilingual education, well, dual languages, of course, we could have different types of dual language. We could have all one language speaking group in the classroom, or we could have two where we have English speakers, and I'm just going to use our large majority of Spanish speakers in Texas. So we might have those two groups where the English speaking children are learning Spanish and Spanish speaking children are learning English, and they work together. So that's one type of dual language program. Bilingual, of course, we're talking about bilingual. So bilingual is the large umbrella,
Okay.
but dual language is a type of program under that. There are also other types of programs within bilingual, which could be transitional bilingual education, developmental bilingual education, but dual language is a part of all of that. So we wanted to make sure that everyone understood that this captures all of the different types of programmatics that could be in a school. And of course, English as a second language is a part of that too. So
I guess just as a personal observation, one of the things that I found out is, I went into the English as second language class, but then after a year, I went on to just English only. So I guess the focus, the emphasis would be to make sure that we're learning, that our students, everyone's learning English, because in order for them to be successful, they have to learn the language that we have here in the United States. So the focus on learning English has to be there.
And we really focus on English as an academic language. So that's our focus. Thank you.
Well, you have a question also. When I first came here, I didn't speak English, so I wish I have the classes I can attend. I learned it on the TV actually. That's another teaching tool. But anyway, I want to ask you, what are the requirements for students to be admitted in this program? Do they need a master's degree or no?
They would need a master's degree.
In education or?
In education or related field that would be related to that, yes. So they would have a master's, they would have, the specific GPA in their undergraduate. We look at undergraduate and their graduate degree, and the experience that they have had in the classroom, working with these types of children, and teaching or also leading their campus. They could be the head of a committee, for example, the LPAC committee, which is the Language Proficiency Assessment Committee on the campus. They could be a specialist on their campus where they coach teachers. So we are looking for those types of experiences, leadership and teaching experiences for this.
So the career path for those graduate probably is, well, go to teaching also, right?
It could continue as a teacher leader, yes, on the campuses. It could continue as a teacher coach for other teachers, and also leadership on campuses where they might be the coordinator of these types of programs for their district even.
Yeah, that's very needed
Or the
actually.
state.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, can I have a motion to approve the request from Texas A&M University for a Doctor of Education in bilingual English as a second language and dual language education? Second. By Mr. Nevares and Dr. Wong. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The motion passes. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 10G3 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from the University of Texas at Austin for a Doctor of Philosophy in Rhetoric and Writing Studies. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions. Art Markman, Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, and Diane Davis, Rhetoric and Writing Department Chair, are also available to answer questions.
Okay. University of Texas at Austin is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Philosophy or a PhD degree program in Rhetoric and Writing Studies that would begin in the fall of 2025. Proposed program would be offered in person to students in Austin. And I went over some of the details of the program yesterday. I'm going to hand it over to UT Austin to talk a little bit more about the program.
Okay. Thank you for considering this program. I want to emphasize that the PhD that we seek is new in name only. Approving our proposal would give a new name and a new home to one of the oldest and most distinguished graduate rhetoric programs in the country. Rhetoric and writing faculty have been designing and delivering this program through the Department of English since 1978. Even after the Department of Rhetoric and Writing, the DRW, was established as a separate unit in 1993, the faculty from my department continued to run the graduate rhetoric concentration in English. Students in the English's graduate rhetoric concentration are recruited by DRW faculty. They take their courses, exams, and practicums with DRW faculty. They're advised by the DRW faculty advisor, and they teach for the DRW. But the DRW is not currently their home department. Is a transfer of this successful graduate program from English to the DRW as a PhD in Rhetoric and Writing Studies. The program has a very strong placement record. Since 2012, when English began keeping track of the rhetoric concentration separately, we've had an 81% placement rate, 86 if you exclude COVID attrition. Our tenure track academic placement rate is 65%, with recent placements at institutions such as Carnegie Mellon, the University of Kentucky, and the Universities of British Columbia and Queensland. The core faculty for the proposed program are already appointed in the DRW. They have assigned offices, and they are already delivering this curriculum through the English department. We already have designated classrooms as well, and we have signed a memorandum of understanding with English to keep sharing graduate student lounges and cubicles in 3 different buildings, and to share program staff once the new PhD is up and running. In short, all financial resources required for this program are already in place. Approval of this PhD requires no new faculty, staff, is the very one we're already successfully running in English's graduate rhetoric concentration. 2, once the DRW PhD is launched, English will no longer admit students into its graduate rhetoric concentration. So this new program will add no additional job seekers to the competitive market. And 3, no new resources will be required to launch this PhD in rhetoric and writing. No new faculty or space or equipment or university funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. I just want to add, on behalf of Provost Mercy and President Hartzell, that we're really pleased that you're able to take the time to consider this proposal. It's something that we fully support. It will bring greater transparency to our students. It will help to support a thriving program that has had a huge impact nationally. The comments that we received from the external advisory group that came to review this program were laudatory and really look to the University of Texas at Austin as a leader in this field. And so we are attention.
Wonderful.
I was just going to make a comment. Yeah, I had recently visited with Dr. Mercy and great job. Congratulations to her to being named as the new provost at UT Austin. When you mentioned those years back, I think I was probably in my first class stepping into campus was a rhetoric and writing class at UT Austin a few years ago. But it's such an important topic, and thank you for the explanation, because when I first saw that, I thought that already existed. But it's not no change in faculty or no change in funding or anything like that. But I think that's great in that particular area. But writing and composition, I think, is so important when you start as an undergraduate in any program, in any field. So I keep up with the programs there, and it's a continued good job. It's still under the liberal arts, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I do have a quick question. How many students you have now? You said is already have the program, but not in that particular specific program, but you know that you have students. How many students is doing this study right now?
So we keep our admissions limited to 4 a year. At any given time, we have about 24.
So those students can continuing and then they will graduate without going through another 6 years, right, in your new program? Is that right?
Right.
Exactly,
They can
okay.
transfer if they.
That's why it's a transfer back to your.
Yes,
oh,
exactly.
Nothing really changes, just change the name. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Texas at Austin for a Doctor of Philosophy in Rhetoric and Writing Studies? So Dr. Farias and Dr. Wong, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Agenda items 10H1 through 10H14 are proposed rules. Agenda items 10H1 through 10H6 were approved on consent. Agenda item 10H7 is consideration and possible action to adopt the proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 4, Subchapter A, Section 4.5 concerning the common calendar. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions.
So as I mentioned yesterday, these rules are related to the common calendar, and we're proposing a repeal. For an institution to seek approval by the agency if its academic calendar begins or ends outside of a given date range. And we were not able to identify any reporting or data that would be impacted by the repeal. And no comments were received regarding this repeal.
Thank you. Any questions? Do I have a motion to approve the proposed repeal of Board Rules Chapter 4, Subchapter A, Section 4.5 concerning the common calendar? By Mr. Wilson,
Second.
second by Mr. Nevadas. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say no. The motion passes. Agenda item 10H8 is consideration and possible action to adopt the proposed amendments to Board Rules Chapter 4, Subchapter A, Section 4.9 concerning the limitations on the number of courses that may be dropped under certain circumstances by undergraduate students. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions. Ms. Mayer.
So these rules proposed amendments include a reorganization of the some of these subsections for clarity and guidelines for institutions regarding statutory requirements for allowing a student to drop 6 or more courses. The proposed amendments also include a provision requiring an institution to maintain an appeals process where required by the Americans with Disabilities Act. As I mentioned yesterday, we did receive a couple of comments. One was in support of the amendment and one requested clarifications, but there were no changes or revisions based upon those comments.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve the proposed amendments to Board Rules Chapter 4, Subchapter A, Section 4.9 concerning limitations on the number of courses that may be dropped under certain circumstances by undergraduate students?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Clemmer, second by Dr. Wong. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The motion passes. Agenda items 10H9 through 10H14 were approved on consent. And that concludes the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success part of the agenda.
Next, agenda item 11, matters relating to Agency Operation Committee, chaired by Welcome Wilson.
Good afternoon. During the Agency Operations Committee meeting yesterday, the committee approved the minutes from the October 2024 Agency Operations Committee meeting. The committee also received a report on grants and contracts. an update on the 89th Texas legislative session, a review of the fiscal year 2025 financial report, a request to approve the updated internal audit charter, an update on internal audit reports and activities, and an update on state and federal compliance monitoring reports and activities. Agenda items 11B and 11C were approved on consent. Agenda item 11D is consideration and possible action to approve the updated internal audit charter. Mr. R.B. Gonzalez, Assistant Commissioner, Internal Audit and Compliance, will present this item and be available for any questions. Mr. Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman, Commissioner Rosser, members. My name is R.B. Gonzalez, and I serve as the Assistant Commissioner for Internal Audit and Compliance. I'm seeking your approval of our internal audit charter, which was last updated in January 2024. The charter is a formal document that defines internal audit's activities, and it aligns expectations between the board, our agency, and the internal audit function. Our professional standards require the board review and approve the charter after important changes, and we updated the charter to reference new audit standards that are effective this calendar year, and also to update the approval from Commissioner Rosser. Thank you for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions or comments.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the updated internal audit charter, please? I have a motion by Emma. Do I have a second? Motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none. Motion passes. Agenda items 11E and 11F, 1 through 5, were approved on consent. This concludes the Agency Operations Committee agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Efficient. Okay. All right. So this concludes our meeting. The time is now 12:06 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So,
Motion by Dr. Wong.
second.
Second by Mr. Nevares. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you all very much. Have a good day.